trucks.
One of them there big trucks, huh?
All right. Does anybody want to post the link?
Copy. And
Josh has got it.
Discord. And
Discord, Telegram. Say Facebook, but I never post anything in there anymore.
let's see. Public.
I hate having to use it for my other podcasts, but it seems like normal people still use it more than anything else.
Old people.
Yeah.
Normal old people. And we all qualify.
I caved and bought some stock based on stupid people buying stock. In other words, Facebook, Google.
Right before the crash.
Yeah.
Oh.
Went from $30 to $19.55 in no time.
Hey, we are on YouTube,
Okay.
just so you know.
That is fine.
I thought you walked in naked the way you were holding your
Yeah, I
hand
was
over
like,
the
oh,
table.
that's awkward.
No, then I would have just, gotten off and been like, Norbert, you can do the hosting, and I'm gonna be busy. I'll jump in halfway through. I'll jump in for the innards.
Jump in after 3 minutes.
You would have gotten off all right.
Wah, wah, wah.
Hey, this is a family show.
Oh, are we streaming?
We're streaming.
Oh,
there,
wow.
there
I
goes
didn't use
Moss.
any dirty words.
There goes the algorithm.
I might have used some dirty concepts, but I didn't use any dirty words.
Just got to keep him off the fireball.
I did not bring any fireball into the room with me
That's the
today.
Saturday show.
Yeah, Saturday gets a little rough.
Yeah. The Saturday Fireball Live Show.
Oh my!
Hey, Londoner, how you doing?
I fell up the stairs after that.
Yeah, you
Oh.
were drinking a lot of that Red Zapple Ale.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
I didn't drink on that show, but I did have a couple of drinks during the week since I was on vacation. The wife bought me some peanut butter whiskey.
Ooh.
Is that Screwball?
Yummy.
No, we normally get the Screwball, and I just took the little ones in. This was Scatterbrain. Now this is the dark chocolate, but this one's hers.
Oh my.
And I had the peanut butter and the peanut butter and jelly, and those were both really good. But I do like the squirrel, or blind squirrel peanut butter. That stuff is good.
We're gonna have to visit a liquor store and look up some of this stuff.
Yeah.
I have to watch my fidgeting. My camera starts bouncing because my whole desk is bouncing. Yeah.
Why is your desk bouncing?
Because I'm
Because
fidgeting.
he's fidgeting
Ah.
under
Joe.
the
No,
table.
No.
Oh my.
So fidgeting now.
Oh no.
We're moss
That's
fidgeting.
what
My
the-
legs start shaking, and I
That-
mean the ones that
That's
are
what
real
the
legs.
kids are calling it these days.
No.
No,
You would
speaking
see
of
a different
interfering.
expression on my face if that was going on.
Oh, God. No interfering with oneself on the mintCast.
This isn't that kind of show, guys.
No.
We're on YouTube,
we're
not
off the
OnlyFans.
rails already.
Who
This is going to be a
watching?
good one.
Londoners watching.
Yeah. Sorry, Londoner.
We've got
We
3
apologize.
playbacks.
Oh no. Hopefully they're all over 18.
So, somebody want to ping Norbert? Let's see if
How
he's-
big of a hammer can I use?
The bigger the better.
Yeah. Sludge. All right, I'm gonna take an old man break before we get to recording.
Yeah, I'm probably going to take one of those halfway through.
Yeah, I've been a little runny today myself, so you never know how many I'm going to take. but I'm good now. Norbert, where's Norbert?
Hey,
There
hey,
he is.
okay, I can go ahead and delete all this.
We got a wayward Norbert. Yay! Hey,
Yep.
Norbert.
Look a little tusky today, Norbert.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
I
Damn.
managed to be just a bit late.
Oh, no worries.
Well, actually, you're right on the button, but we will be starting late.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Well, now we got to wait for Josh to get back before we can do the counts.
Oh, you said the count.
The count.
Hey, is this coming across mirrored like it is for me?
No.
On air? No, I'm getting
Okay.
it straight.
So you only see yourself mirrored, I guess. Somebody told me that's how
Yeah.
it worked.
I got my autism shirt on today.
It's like you're looking at the back of the screen.
Right.
Okay, I have a technical
Right.
issue,
Yeah.
and I will be back in 2 minutes.
Okay,
2
we'll be
minutes.
here.
And there's Josh. You just missed Norbert. Of course, you don't have your ears on, so you don't know you missed. You just missed Norbert. He was in and out.
Evidently, you and Norbert can't be on the stream at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh, so should
Yeah,
I stay or go?
personality issues.
Oh, we'll see. You guys
Who
can
gets
swap
voted
back
off?
and forth.
Right. Voted off the island.
Oh, heck, if there was a vote, I'd never get on the island.
Oh, come on now, Moss.
Oh. So I have a treasurer now for my campaign, but I need a social media manager.
Oh,
And a pollster.
Social media manager.
Yeah, somebody that,
Well-
understands things like TikTok and Twitter,
oh, yeah. Wish I could help.
Instagram.
Well, it's an uphill battle anyhow.
Yeah, I wouldn't look to the FOSS community for those.
Find a teenager.
Unless you
Yeah.
want to try to run your campaign on Mastodon and Matrix.
All right, that's sure to succeed.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that'll get out to the voters.
Yeah. Yeah. You got kids, Joe? Should
I
tap
do.
'em.
I do. I have kids.
Yeah. I'm sure they could start pulling their own weight.
If they could be motivated.
There's
They're
the
not
issue
motivated
with
to
it.
see their dad on school board?
I guess not.
I know I wouldn't be.
Well, ask your daughter about her friends. Get one of them.
Well, if I were in the office, I'd just ask some of the people I know there. But
That was a brief stay.
He's bashful.
I'm telling you.
maybe he's having similar issues to what I had.
Norbert?
I'm here.
Come
Alright.
on, Dusty.
My technical issue was that I remember that Void doesn't like to play well with Audacity for some reason, so I fell back to Fedora.
All right.
So we're blaming Void now.
Yeah, well, because I've been using Debian for the show, but this is the first time that I'm not using Debian for the show because I wanted to book Fedora for everything full time to finally get some stable foundation for everything.
This is why I multi-boot. If something works, it doesn't work, I just boot into something else.
Yeah, Mint.
Usually,
Never fails. Yep, never
Um,
fails.
well, Mint is actually the worst of my distros for working with Bluetooth.
Really?
The best is Arco. They've got a single panel Bluetooth manager that just it's there.
Have you got an updated kernel? Trying
Yeah.
to get Bluetooth to work?
No, not for Mint.
That might help.
Mint and Bodhi are both on 5.4.
You can go 513.
Yeah, I would try the 513, see if that makes it any better.
We'll just get that void maintainer back on.
I'm just
And
an
yell at him.
LTS kind of guy, people.
What was his
Yeah,
name?
well, I'm also using Pipefire, and I'm not sure how well implemented
Toyum.
Pipefire is in Void. Yeah, Toyum. Yeah.
We'll get Toyum back on, and you can yell at him.
Well, are we Audacity ready?
Yeah, you want to
hopefully.
run the
One-
numbers?
As soon as everyone says they're ready.
I'm ready.
Ready?
Robert?
Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah.
1, 2.
I was going to do the same thing, except that
What is
wasn't
it?
going to give me that much.
Starting. Default.
Bunch of rascals.
And it seems to be working. How am I too quiet? Am I too loud? How is my volume?
Oh,
You're
good.
fine.
You're good.
Sounds
Okay.
good to me.
Okay, then I'm ready.
All right, Audacity, people. Let's do 3, 2,
I
1,
hear a
record.
either a lawnmower or a very loud plane.
It is not my lawnmower.
That's a plane.
Yep.
You got a window open, Moss?
Nope.
I'm in the garage, and the
That's
garage
not on
door's
my
a little
end.
bit open. Oh, it's here with me. It's a plane.
Oh. You're playing.
Yeah, everyone blame Moss. That's right.
Let me close the door.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Record. Someone was having an interesting time there. Ready for sync?
Norbert's not.
Do we need to start over?
I hope not.
Uh-oh. What do we got here? Oh.
Stream.
Thank you.
Do 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 do.
Sorry, I forgot to soundproof everything.
Are we ready for the sync?
Yep.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, 0.
Zero.
Zero.
That didn't sound bad.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That was awful on my end.
Sounded
0, 0, 0, 0.
well, it sounded
Yeah,
pretty good
that's
on
what
my
you're
end.
gonna get with latency from all over the world.
Well, everyone mute your mics and let's go.
Except me. I'm not gonna mute mine.
Everyone but Joe, mute your mics and let's go.
Everybody ready?
Yep.
Awesome. Welcome to mintCast, the podcast by the Linux Mint community for all users of Linux. Off in La La Land, I'm Joe.
Tipping my fedoras, all 3 of them. I'm Norbert.
No longer booting into recovery mode. I'm Josh T.
I'm Moksha Moss.
And hey, everyone, I'm Bill.
This is episode 381. This is episode 381.5. Recorded on Sunday, the 20th of February. Livestream information is at mintcast.org/livestream. If you see something that you'd like to hear about, tell us. Send us email at mintcast@mintcast.org. Join us live on YouTube. Post at the mintcast subreddit. Chat with us on Telegram, Discord, Facebook, or post directly at mintcast.org. First up in the news, AMD builds brand new Linux graphics driver support. Steam Deck platform driver coming to the Linux kernel. Firefox 97 and Proton 7.0 are released. Ubuntu Mate to add native Flatpak support. In security and privacy, Arch Linux packages are outdated. Mozilla does something really meta. The Earn It Act makes a return. Flock was a flop, but Google has some new ideas. Then in our wanderings, I get another new-to-me bike. Norbert defeats distro hopping. Moss goes international. Josh tells us about running Manjaro. And Bill is truck casting. In our innards section, we talk about Raspberry Pis and other single-board computers. And finally, the feedback and a couple of suggestions.
Should we decide who? I mean, I would like to stand by my idea of dividing up reading the news among ourselves. Should we decide it beforehand, or should we just pick people as we go?
It's
Which
too
would be
late to
better
do it
for it?
beforehand. We're live here.
Yes, but if we do it in one take, then it's easier to cut out. If
Okay,
anyone-
I'll do the first one while you guys
Okay.
put your names next to the next ones.
Okay.
Okay, first up in the news. AMD quietly working on new Linux GPU driver support block by block. From Phoronix. The fundamental driver change is about initializing the graphics card based on the IP hardware blocks discovered, rather than segmenting the driver code paths taken solely based on the graphics card PCI ID. Recent AMD GPU support and IP discovery table that note the different hardware blocks comprising the GPU. That rework to the AMD GPU driver has already been mainlined to the Linux kernel, so where for the latest GPUs it's already taking this IP-based discovery approach when lighting up the GPU to parse that table and take the respective code paths rather than being explicitly done based on the PCI ID. The IP-based discovery route is a win for less hard-coded information within the driver and effectively makes the driver more modularized and cleaner. This can also help with AMD on the custom SoC side by potentially needing less driver changes if it's just a matter of building a new combination of existing supported blocks. But as noted last year, this would also benefit AMD in bringing up new hardware support as it can be done in a more modular manner rather than some big sequential patch series. Norbert?
This is one of the things that, sorry, I wanted to reflect on this. This is one of the things that the end user will probably never notice, and it's probably best if they don't notice. But I wonder how much influence for example, the Steam Deck has all on this. Because I think the Steam Deck uses all AMD hardware and probably custom-made ones.
Yeah, but that would be an APU, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but that still sort of applies. I mean, that still sort of uses the GPU drivers
Okay.
in a way, right? I would assume.
Yeah, it has some or some GPU drivers, but they would be specialized for that particular APU.
Yeah. Speaking of the Steam Deck, Valve releases Proton 7.0 with major improvements for Linux gaming. This is from 9 to 5 Linux. Based on Wine 7.0 and DXVK 1.9.4, Proton 7.0 comes with major improvements for Linux gaming, including improved audio support for the Skyrim and Fallout 4 games, support for local decoding of H.264 videos, and initial support for Legacy Easy Anti-Cheat with the Star Wars Squadrons and Knockout City video games, already playable, and many others coming soon. Proton 7.0 also improves support for many games that were already playable. You can see the full list of these games in the article that we will link in the show notes below. Other noteworthy changes include improved Paradox launcher support, improved Steam input controller support for games running via Origin. I didn't actually know that Proton had any support for games on Origin. That being one of the biggest rivals for Steam, which is interesting.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, that is interesting that Proton works with Origin.
Yeah, it was something I was unaware of for sure. Alright, well next is Mozilla Firefox 97 is now available for download. From 9 to 5 Linux, it adds a new set of 6 colorway themes to customize look and feel. And for Linux, this release removes the PostScript printing support. For Windows, it adds support for the new scroll bars on Windows 11. And for Mac OS, it improves system font rasterization to improve page loading.
PostScript printing support. Was anybody even using that?
I have not.
What exactly is that?
Exactly.
Support
That's probably
for
why
printing
they removed it.
Well
postcard
said.
fonts.
I do know they've deprecated some of those old colorway themes as well. I think from 94, if I recall correctly.
That's cool. Moss.
They had colorway in 94? Okay. All right. Less than 10% of Firefox users on Linux are running Wayland. This is from Phoronix. Mozilla shared info on how many people use X11 versus Wayland. And X11 is averaging around 93%, which leaves Wayland at 7%. That's August 2021 through February 2022. This may change as Ubuntu 22.04 LTS will use Wayland by default.
What's really interesting about this article is that they posted a graph, and it shows daily numbers, and you can see that it is clearly fluctuating between a higher share of F4Xorg in the weekdays and a lower.
It looks like no one's using Wayland on the weekends, and they go back to it during the work week.
Yeah, so it says yes, on the graph, share for Xorg is around 94%. It's approaching 94% on the weekdays, but on the weekends it falls back to around 91%, while Wayland is gaining more users in the weekend. I mean, it's still not much because it's like 7 versus 9% for Wayland, but what I think this is that people who use Linux for their work during the week will most likely use Xorg and Xorg session because it's more tried and true, it's more reliable. But people who go home on the weekend on their personal computers are more likely to use Wayland because they have less restrictions on what they can install on their computer. So that's my theory.
Yeah. Okay. Well, X11 is old and bloated and probably full of security holes, but it has a lot more functionality than Wayland, even though Wayland is, not exactly brand new or anything like that. It's just not as old as X11. So,
Like I said,
yeah,
there could be an X12 soon due to Wayland pressure. I wouldn't bet on it, but there could be. At least I predicted it. It would be nice to earn a point for that.
yeah. Okay.
Okay, moving on. Ubuntu Mate 22.04 is to add native support for Flatpak. From SIL-RC. Flatpak support will be included in Ubuntu Mate 22.04 out of the box, making it the first official Ubuntu flavor to offer it, along with all the required desktop integrations with portals.
So, does Ubuntu Mate have Snap support out of the box?
Yeah,
Yes,
as a matter
all
of fact, some of
Ubuntu
the
has Snap
programs.
support out of the box.
The
Do all
well-named-
official Ubuntu flavors have to have Snap by default?
I don't
No,
think
I
You
think-
had to go out of your way to install Flatpak.
Well, I think Ubuntu doesn't ship with any Snap.
I think you're right, Josh. I think you have to actually install it and enable it, and then it just works. It's trivial, but it's
Well, I know
interesting.
Canonical is upset about that because they have been trying to get everyone to use Snap, and everyone seems to rather use Flatpak.
It's interesting that it's that way, though, because these are people that actually work for Canonical in many cases that are
People
doing
also people also say sometimes that Flatpak is better on the desktop. I mean, there really is no Flatpak for a server yet, but on the server side, maybe Snaps do have an advantage over Flatpak that I'm not aware of.
Well,
For
fine,
my
keep
part-
it on Ubuntu server.
Yeah, for my part, I think what I'm mostly concerned about is who is maintaining the flat pack, and who is maintaining the snap. If it's just somebody in the community, then that probably won't be as good as like if the flat pack or snap is actually maintained by the original developer, which is the case with or will be the case with the Firefox snap. It's not always clear though who is actually distributing these packages.
What's really interesting here is that they say it will include all the required desktop integration with portals. That's interesting because when I tried to use Flatpaks on Arch or Void, which don't really have it well implemented, when I would be using a browser as a Flatpak and I want to save files or something, I would the file save dialog would pop up, but they didn't have access to all the directories, only directories that the Flatpak itself had access to, and it would keep defaulting to some temporary directory. So I would have to just manually give a permission to the browser itself for the directory I want to save to. And the other thing is that when I had I clicked on a link, for example, on Discord, which I had as a Flatpak, it wasn't able to open the link in my native browser, which wasn't the Flatpak because the Flatpak Discord was too isolated. But when I moved to Fedora, which I will talk about later, I moved to Fedora and it seems to have that implemented better because I can just, when I clicked on a link in Telegram, which was a Flatpak, and it was able to open the link in a non-Flatpak browser. And from the non-Flatpak browser, the system handler was able to redirect that link to Zoom, where I wanted to join the Linux Saloon meeting via Zoom. And it was able to open that in a Zoom, which was also a Flatpak. So it had a more universal, more well-implemented experience, which is I'm really rooting for Fedora to be more popular.
I wonder if that's got a lot to do with the permission set up for the file system.
Yeah, because basically the way it works is by default the Flatpak app will have its own file picker or saver dialog, but with portals it can just redirect to a different window. So even though the browser doesn't have permissions to access the entire system, portals can make it so that the file saving window that you open will have access to those directories. And so it kind of redirects the task. It's not a Flatpak itself doing it, if I understand it correctly.
I'm just going to be curious to see how this affects the other flavors of Ubuntu. If this maybe snowballs a little bit and starts rolling and really gets widespread Flatpak support going across the board.
Remember how much Clem was slammed for not allowing snaps in Mint?
Oh, yes.
Well, I think he was slammed because of the things he said about it. And then, the back and forth contest of words that ensued afterwards. The people that are for it, they don't have much to say about it. The people that are against it have a lot to say about it. And it's mostly philosophical and not a whole lot of technical. But I've gotten on just fine with both on every system that I've put them on.
What snaps have you used on the desktop?
On the desktop, I've tried on the Raspberry Pi that I'll get to later. The only way to get the updated version of Firefox was with a snap.
I guess the advantage of using snaps on Ubuntu, on proper Ubuntu, is that it's developed by Canonical, so it will be. So I think it would likely be more well implemented. For example, as I know that the Red Hat people are very heavily involved in Flatpak development, so Flatpak is very integrated into Fedora.
Yeah.
So I assume that using snaps is a better experience on Ubuntu than on any other distro that offers them. For example, look at Zorin OS. They did their software center in the way that it shows both snaps and Flatpaks along native packages, so they're not discriminating at all, which is another approach.
Yeah, to be fair, I've only really used a lot of them on Ubuntu proper installations, and then I've got a few like the Nextcloud snap. That snap right there is probably the flagship reason to use the technology at all, because they handle so much of the background stuff for you to get that up and running, and the little bit that's left for you to manage is really not a lot, comparatively speaking.
I think the hurdles that Snaps still faces the decompression time. It's gotten better, but it still needs work, and theme integration.
And again, if you're using Ubuntu proper, the theme integration's fine. But you shoehorn that into something else. Honestly, the more I sit and think about it, the more I think, yeah, you probably just best to use Flatpaks or your native packages for your any other distribution.
And my Audacity just crashed.
Wow. Awesome. That's okay. That happens every now and again. So let's just, while you're getting it back up, we'll pause right here.
Selected. Project was not set properly. Okay.
Security update stuff that needs names.
We still have one news item left.
Yeah. And Bill, you're up for that one.
Oh. You want me to do it now or wait for him?
Wait for him to get his Audacity running again.
Okay, so I think it has everything, but now I have to start another one.
Are you going to lose everything from the beginning?
No, I have 18 minutes of audio recovered, so that's probably everything. I've just exported, and then okay, so I had this happen to Discord on Fedora, but then I installed Discord as a Flatpak, and it. No, I will tell that after I'm back recording. So what I will do.
Should we do a sync to get Norbert synced again?
Yeah.
It's up to Norbert.
You have got to be really nervous. I see it in your eyes.
Who?
Norbert.
That seems unlikely.
Yeah, I just look like my nerves are completely frayed.
No, you look good, boss.
I look like I've been smoking something.
Have you?
I wasn't going to say that.
No, I don't touch that stuff. It's not good for me.
Yeah.
Say when, Norbert.
You guys didn't pause your Audacity, did you?
Nope.
No.
Okay.
I ain't touching that.
Nope.
I was going to say.
Leave it alone.
Yeah.
Okay, give me like 1 more minute.
Yes, sir.
1 more minute. That's a Weird Al song, isn't it?
I don't know any of his songs.
Really?
Really? Is that something I should be ashamed of?
Yes. Very.
Yes.
A lot. It's like saying that you don't know that Adam Sandler put out albums.
Did Adam Sandler put out albums? I don't know.
Yes, he did. He started his career. He started his career making albums. You should check out his albums.
Oh, he did make
Weird
a
Al's
Christmas
albums.
album, didn't he?
No, he made a bunch of albums.
Okay,
well, like nobody knows Martin Mull was a musician.
No.
I see him in a lot of shows, but he started out as a comedy, sort of R&B-ish musician. He had his own band. He had an HBO special and everything.
I'm ready.
Adam Sandler started out as a comedic musician.
Okay. 3, 2, 1,
0.
Oh,
you
I should have
say anything.
Oh yeah, I just pressed my record button. Okay, I will start recording now.
We were trying to do a sync, Norbert.
Okay.
3, 2, 1,
0.
Okay, I'm back. Well,
not really.
Speaking of Flatpaks, that was interesting. Audacity just crashed on me, and I had that happen to Discord as well on Fedora. So I just quickly uninstalled Audacity and installed the Flatpak of it. So it's hopefully going to be fine for now. Another 0.14 Flatpak.
So for those of you that are listening to the mintCast, because you are fans of the Linux Mint distribution, I'll go on record for saying, had you been using Mint, it would have just worked.
Oh, yeah. Gotta agree.
Yes,
All
but on the
right.
other hand, sorry, no, nothing.
Bill, you're
All right.
up.
Here we go. Steam Deck platform driver posted for the Linux kernel. I know nothing about this. From Phoronix. A kernel driver was posted for the Steam Deck's platform control support. This will likely be useful for using other distros on the Steam Deck. And it's not expected to land until Linux 5.18, until which time SteamOS will use a patched kernel.
Right. But once 5.18 comes out, you'll be easily able to install your own operating system on there without having to patch the kernel every time, and repatch the kernel every time there's an update to the kernel.
As long as you're using a distribution that ships with 5.18. Correct?
It's interesting how
Or can force
Valve has
5.18.
it's interesting how Valve has basically didn't disclose anything interesting about the SteamOS yet. They're just waiting for the last minute before the Steam Deck launches.
There we go, assuming again that they care about Linux. And
Well, they were talking about making SteamOS available to everyone, even if you didn't have a Steam Deck, so you could just install it onto a computer.
yeah,
Yeah, but it will still use the same kernel maintained by them, so I wonder how well it would perform on other hardware.
Well,
And more importantly,
if it's
does
built
this
in,
allow you?
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, Joe.
Go
I was
ahead.
going to say, more importantly, it will allow you to now say, I'm using Arch, by the way.
ooh,
Well, if it's in the Linux kernel, if it's in 5.18, and then SteamOS should work with anything that has 5.18 because it will have their kernel items plus all the regular kernel items that need to be there for it to work on a normal machine.
but from a
Oh, Josh.
corporate standpoint, if Valve is a company that is putting out a product, and so they are inherently owning the experience of SteamOS. And if people put SteamOS on crap hardware, they have a crappy experience and start telling the world that it's crappy, does that somehow or another in some way reflect poorly on
Because
Valve?
the 1%, or what is it, 3% of people that actually run Linux, and the 1% of those
Yeah,
people that
you-
are going to run SteamOS as opposed to just running Steam are actually going to have some kind of impact on their user base.
I suppose.
Well, it also depends on how well Valve controls the conversation about what kind of specs you need on your computer to run SteamOS.
Yeah.
If you're putting it on crap machine, and crap machine does not have the specs it takes to run SteamOS, then it's your fault, not Steam's, not Valve's.
People just tend to decide on their own what's their fault. I don't know. I think it just seems like I could understand if they wouldn't. If it's out there, you can get it, but they're not going to go out of their way to make it all that easy to distribute. I don't know. That's just me looking at it from a cynical point of view, I suppose.
Well, maybe they're opening it up to the community, SteamOS, allowing anybody to install it, specifically for the people that will install it and then develop for it to make it better.
Yeah. Now that's a thing.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the security and privacy updates. First up, Norbert.
Yeah, I had the idea of expanding this section to include the news about more privacy-related news, as it was kind of related to security already. So the first one is Arch Linux could use some help with toolchain maintenance, and I think this news is more than a week old, and this is on Phoronix. Arch is known to be at the forefront of rolling release distros, but over the past year, its compiler toolchain for the packages have... Sorry, technical break. Sorry. Okay, I start it again. Arch Linux could use some help with toolchain maintenance. This is from Phoronix, and it says, Arch is known to be at the forefront of rolling release distros, but over the past year, its compiler toolchain has fallen behind, as an apparent lack of manpower has been final take. And the first one is, Arch Linux could use some help with toolchain maintenance. This is from Phoronix. Arch is known to be at the forefront of rolling release distros, but over the past year, its compiler toolchain has fallen behind, as an apparent lack of manpower has been impacting process in this area. An Arch Linux thread about glibc and GCC package maintenance was started in late October last year, with no official updates to the packages in question. At the time of publishing the article on February 7th, GCC was on version 11.1, with 11.2 being the latest, and glibc was on 2.33, with 2.34 being the latest. Among the many changes in the GNU C library, each release are security fixes, so that was the biggest concern. Arch developer Alan McRae, who previously maintained some of the GNU toolchain packages, commented back in October. This is the new toolchain maintainer's second toolchain update, and the previous maintainer is no longer around to provide advice. There was an update there was a follow-up article saying Giancarlo Razzo... Sorry. I hope this will be cut out by whoever's editing. There was an update post saying that Giancarlo Razzolini, who took over the GNU toolchain packages of Arch Linux once the prior package manager left, acknowledged that he hasn't had much time recently to work on Arch-related activities and that the toolchain has suffered as a consequence. But he does acknowledge in his status update that for the future, we are trying to bring more people to work with the whole toolchain, so it is not too much of a buzz factor. We should have at least 2 toolchain maintainers, not just one. And this news was interesting because it wasn't, the way I saw it, that it wasn't as much that it was out of date, but it wasn't properly maintained. So I actually compared the versions of some of these packages in various distros. And for example, when I looked at Fedora and Tumbleweed, Opera Tumbleweed, both of those had all of these packages, so glibc and GCC at the latest version, and even the likes of PC Linux OS and Solus. But then Arch actually got an update, so since then the new versions were released for both glibc and binutils, which was another area that people were concerned. And so at the moment, Arch is actually more up to date with the toolchain than, for example, Fedora is. So I think this was mostly resolved since then.
That's cool.
And then I
Always good
looked
to
at
have a backup developer.
Yeah. And then I looked at Void, which was my daily driver. I still have it around. To what version of these packages it has, and it's even more out of date than Arch was back then. So I think that it was kind of blown out of proportion, and Arch wasn't really doing it nearly as bad as people were saying it was.
Okay, U.S. senators want the Earn It bill to scan all messages online from the Electronic Frontier Foundation. In early February, the Senate Judiciary Committee voted to advance the Earn It bill, which, if enacted, will put massive legal pressure on internet companies to stop using encryption and instead scan all user messages, photos, and files. The bill could now be voted on by the full Senate. The bill's sponsors have stated that the main motivation behind the Earn It Act is to protect children, but the kind of abusive images they're concerned about are already highly illegal under federal law, and any internet platform that knows about these kind of materials being distributed via their services are required to take action on it. Earn It threatens to punish companies that don't start following a specific list of law enforcement demands, among which is the scanning of user messages. End-to-end encryption is simply not compatible with the type of surveillance that states will demand and that the bill's sponsors have explicitly suggested.
Look, they can try to enforce this all they want to, but honestly, that would be the type of thing to make me switch to something that is end-to-end encrypted, whether they like it or not, even if I had to put in my own encryption.
Mental
that's why
Outlaw
I'm
did
on
an
Proton
interesting.
Mail anyhow, because they do have end-to-end encryption. I know they said that Proton cooperated with the French authorities, but that all they gave out was an ISP number. They did not and could not give them emails.
Useless metadata. That's about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
TootNota's the same way. That's the one
Mental
I use.
Mental Outlaw did an interesting video about this, and he pointed out that these internet companies are better at enforcing this kind of illegal materials than the government would be, because them being publicly traded companies, they have pressure on them to keep up a good reputation. So basically, according to him, the free market was better at tracking down illegal activities online than any
I'm
government.
sorry. Facebook has plainly dropped the ball over and over on controlling illegal activities on their product.
Well,
Might
people
maybe
is
with
losing,
child pornography, but not with any other illegal activities that are going on.
and accordingly, Facebook is losing popularity.
Well, I can see how it would be
That is
hard
not
to
being controlled by the
police.
market. That's the market controlling them.
Yeah, I see how it could be hard to police something as massive as Facebook. I mean, every time you lock something down, someone else is going to find another way around it or another way to break the law. I mean, when you have a platform that huge, that's just going to happen.
But I'm assuming this would apply to anyone who provides any service on the internet, regardless of size. So it would apply to someone who's, for example, running an instance of Mastodon or a Matrix server and something like that. So even small providers, small services would have to comply.
This would be the first major step in Big Brother is watching you.
Yeah, I agree.
I really think if they did do something like this, it would really push people to start using encryption. So,
Would it?
their
Would it
own
really?
encryption.
Normal people?
Yeah.
You seem to think there are normal people.
Oh God, I talk to them every day. You got to go out of the house, but they're out there. And
You lost me at
They-
out of the house.
they look just
then
like
those-
you and me, so you got to look. You got to talk to them to find out. But yeah, they're normal.
Well, yeah, and part of the problem with email, I mean, even if you're using something like Tutanota or Proton Mail, a lot of people are still using big services like Gmail, so you lose that end-to-end encryption.
Yeah.
So, I know.
Yeah,
dealing
it's
with
really
my
only
own-
useful if the person on the other end is using Proton or TootNota. You know,
Exactly.
a person has to learn to conduct themselves on the internet in full awareness of the Wild West sort of environment that you're operating in. You know, that people have this strange, normal people, I'll do it again, normal people have this strange expectation that since they're at home in their living room, safely locked behind a door, that they can do whatever they want on their computer. And the
Unless the door is controlled by a smart computer, a smart home.
yeah. Oh
But-
gosh.
Look,
Is the internet still in its Wild West stage, or are you implying that it will always be a Wild West of sorts?
As long as freedom outweighs all of the abstraction that people want to put in place to handle freedom for us.
there's a reason why people that are in tech or in security don't have smart locks. They have mechanical locks. And it's because they know it's insecure. It's another vulnerability.
They
Yeah,
know
but if
that
someone really-
IoT is still running on Linux kernel 2 point something.
You mean we don't all have Nest thermostats controlling our heaters and air
God, that
conditioners?
is what nonsense. But that's my
But also
opinion.
there has been a general trend of average people becoming more privacy conscious. So if that
Yeah.
continues, maybe, well, I'm not sure if more people would be willing to set up their own hosting or their own stuff at home. but maybe there will be easier to access ways to do that.
Well, I think
Easier-
there is
easier
positive
self-hosting.
momentum in privacy. I think that's a word that's getting out to the public, but in terms of widespread adoption of truly secure practices, I question how many people are really going out of their way to deal with the inconveniences of implementing it on their own, on their end.
Yeah, I guess I'm talking to people more and more, and it seems like they're collectively people are aware of things that maybe 10 years ago they weren't, like don't click on links and messages, and don't open this and don't do that. So I think it's a slow progression, but having the expectation that your email is encrypted is probably, I'm not sure they do a good enough job to explain when they're selling you these services that, okay, by the way, this is only good if the person on the other end is encrypted too. Otherwise, it goes nowhere. So I was aware of that when I signed up for the service. I signed up for it because I've been trying to minimize what I give to Google, but I'm not sure that they do a nearly good enough job making that plain to normal people.
Right. I think it has to be a bit of word of mouth from us as the community that knows about it to tell our family members and friends, hey, maybe you ought to think about switching over to this service or that. And just trying to keep pushing it forward. It's going to be a grassroots effort.
People just need to start caring about the fact that Google is literally reading your email.
We need a browser that is not Chrome, but still has easy access to something like, for example, if people want to watch Netflix or listen to Spotify, they will have to have some sort of DRM enabled for the service. And what
the
I
next
wanted
story
to
is going to undermine that one quite a bit.
Yeah, well, but I, for example, tried to listen to Tidal in Firefox, where I think it was back on Brave. Brave asked me whether I want to install this DRM piece of software in order to be able to listen to that. So I would imagine if someone was willing to switch to Linux, they would still want to stick to Chrome because that's one of the few ways that they can still watch Netflix and in proper resolution without any interruptions. But yeah, speaking of Firefox, our next piece of news is Mozilla partners with Meta to create privacy-preserving advertising technology. This is from Mozilla's blog directly. Attribution metrics are what advertisers use to see if their advertising campaigns are working and to see how well they are performing. Though attribution is crucial to advertising, current attribution practices, the use of third-party cookies to collect as much data as possible, have terrible privacy properties. Mozilla has been looking to apply privacy-preserving advertising technology to solve this attribution problem so that advertisers can get answers to important questions without harming user privacy. They have been working with a team from Meta, formerly Facebook, everyone was shocked by this news, on a new proposal for a cross-browser API that aims to enable conversion measurements or attribution for advertising called Interoperable Private Attribution, or IPA. IPA aims to provide advertisers with the ability to perform attribution while providing strong privacy guarantees. IPA has two key privacy-preserving features. First, it uses multi-party computation to avoid allowing any single entry websites, browser makers, or advertisers to learn about user behavior. Second, it is an aggregated system, which means that it produces results that cannot be linked to individual users. So basically, together these features mean that the IPA cannot be used to track or profile users.
Too much hops for me.
Sorry?
Yeah, that acronym.
He's playing on IPA.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's interesting because this is a proposal for a web standard. So it's not for Firefox only, or it's not for Meta to improve their practices only. So yeah, this is basically the fact that there is no standardized way for advertisers to collect data. And third-party cookies, I think they are somewhat out on their way out. So, for example, Google is also planning to get rid of third-party cookies. So this is yet another proposal to replace them. And it sounds good in theory.
It sounds
But
like
the-
they've got so many isolating features that all they have to do is flip a switch and de-isolate them.
And I think you're right, Moss. I think they add in a little bit of white noise, but it's really easy to go ahead and remove that again. And, yeah.
Well,
Not
the
so
question
great.
is, since both Mozilla and Meta are involved in this, Meta's trustworthiness is, of course, questionable. But
Trustworthiness?
If Mozilla,
When did they have
Oh.
that?
well, when did they start? But since Mozilla is involved as well, how much would you bet on this being an actually well implemented thing?
Well,
If it becomes
The only way it could be worse is if they teamed with Mega instead of Meta.
but it's not really a collaboration. I think it's just they're helping each other. So it's like, yeah. So it's basically they want to create a web standard. I'm not sure who would own that standard or how it would be like, but yeah, if Meta really wanted to, maybe they could easily take advantage of this and not undermine it. I'm not
Yeah, and
sure.
I think it's yet another opportunity for those that want to lash out against Mozilla. I mean, the optics of it just look bad on its face, and they're already struggling within the open source community with their image. So, yeah, I don't know if this is a good move, even if the intent isn't malicious.
interest-based advertising. Topics works by pinpointing 5 of your interests based on your web activity, as measured by participating sites for 1 week. Your browser will store these topics for 3 weeks before deleting them. Google says that these categories are selected entirely on your device and don't involve any external servers, including Google servers. When you visit a website, topics will show the site and its advertising partners just 3 of your interests, consisting of 1 topic from each of the past 3 weeks. Google's running out of time to replace third-party cookies in Chrome by 2023. As promised, the company plans on launching a developer trial for topics in Chrome, but there's no information on when exactly that will begin. So this is another attempt to eliminate third-party cookies. And I know it's been tried before in a couple of different ways, but, it's never really happened because a lot of people are, making their advertising revenue through these third-party cookies.
Right. And let's not forget Google is, largely an advertising company. So, how much do you trust them?
It's like how McDonald's is a real estate company because they own the land that their restaurants are built on, and I think they have more revenue from that than actually selling food. But if Google has to get rid of them by 2023, they're really running out of time here.
And if anyone is wondering what Flock is that they're getting rid of,
It was a
Federated Learning of Cohorts aims to give advertisers a way of targeting ads without exposing details on individual users, and it does this by grouping people with similar interests together: football fans, truck drivers, retired travelers, or whatever it is. Woohoo! That sounds like a winner.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing could ever go wrong by grouping people together and then tailoring all the content based on that.
We do have a
Oh,
couple
no.
of truck
People
drivers
are
here.
people
Don't you
are
know?
easily categorized.
All truckers have exactly the same interests.
Well, based on my
Most
experience
do.
with truckers, meeting truckers and interacting with them, I would say the majority of them are running Linux Mint.
Oh,
I resemble that remark.
But that's just my limited.
All the people that have had licenses to
Of records I've
operate
been
large
talking with.
trucks that are on this podcast have all run Mint.
Yes, but that's all
Nailed
the
it, Joe.
truckers that I personally know.
I know two others besides me that are running Mint, but
That's
not that
because
they have
you
any
made
clue.
them.
Yeah, it's because I made them.
Well, I know Dale has used Mint. I think he's using something Arch these days, but he is keeping an eye on
He's on Debian testing
Pop
right now.
OS. He's on Debian now,
Debian
But he's-
testing, yeah.
but he's keeping an eye on Pop OS because he's running on a System 76. My tongue isn't working. He is running on a System 76 laptop.
Yeah.
All right, Josh, you're up.
All right. So next we have multiple vulnerabilities put 40 million Ubuntu users at risk from TechRadar. Security researchers have recently found multiple vulnerabilities on Ubuntu systems, some of which would allow a threat actor to gain root privileges on the target endpoint. The team found the flaws in the snap confine function on Linux operating systems. Snaps are self-contained applications running in a sandbox with mediated access to the host system. Snap confine is a program used internally by Snapd to construct the execution environment for Snap applications. By abusing the discovered flaw, the attacker can elevate the privileges of a basic account all the way to root access. As usual, by the time the news hits the press, a patch had already been issued, so Ubuntu users are advised to patch up to the latest version immediately.
This is kind of a clickbaity title for the article because it says that you do have to have access to a local account, so it's not something that can be what's the word I'm
Remote
looking for here?
access.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're,
you-
un-
you
And
you're
can-
where are they
unlikely
getting
to.
this 40 million number? Where's that coming from?
Well,
Yeah, I
basically,
was
Air.
just going to ask that.
basically everybody
Number
that
of-
installed Ubuntu or an Ubuntu variant, anything that had
But they
Snapd on it
never
was vulnerable.
released those statistics.
Yeah,
We
they're
don't
very
know how
tight
many
about
people are
their.
using Ubuntu.
Yeah,
I can
Evidently,
appreciate
40
them
million.
being tight. Yeah, right on the money. 40 million. That sounds like a lot. It's probably not.
But yeah, I'm glad they got a patch out before the announcement. That's always a good thing to do.
Unless they postpone the announcement for 3 years, like some of them do.
Yeah. Postpone the announcement until after the fix comes out. But yeah, it's another thing that you're never really going to see implemented in the wild because you need that local account. Okay.
yeah. So don't invite a hacker. Just come sit at your workstation.
Right. Don't give anybody your password. All right. Next up, we have our bi-weekly wanderings. First up in the bi-weekly wanderings, my back tire on my bike got bent. I tried to true it in the normal fashion, but one of the spokes anchors came completely unseated. So I looked to get a new-to-me bike or another back tire, which was 26 inches. I'd prefer a street bike instead of a mountain bike, but a street bike is much more expensive around here. I mean, you can get mountain bikes for free around here, just looking around the market. I did end up getting a hybrid bike, but it did have slicks on it, the narrower slicks, so very street style, but a little bit heavier than your normal street bike, to see if I like it or not. I got it for, $20? It's been pretty good, but I still have some more adjustments to do on it, but with the cold, I haven't gotten it all dialed in yet. I haven't done much riding. I did some last night, which is, after I wrote all this, and so I did get the tires trued a little bit on that, and then got the nose angle of the seat adjusted so it's better, and got it out on the road, and I'm still not sure whether or not I like the bike. It's got a slightly narrower frame than the mountain bike that I was riding before, so I might keep my eye out for another back wheel for that mountain bike. I got my care package from Moss of things to work on. It included 2 sets of headphones and 2 handheld tape recorders. One
and
of
the
the
power cord that I mistakenly included in the box.
and a power cord that I need to ship back, but I'll get to that in a minute because one of the headsets looks like an easy fix and only needs like a 3.5 millimeter jack replaced, but because it's set up for a PC, that means it's the 3-pole, not the 4-pole. And that should be a quick, easy fix. And then the other headset either needs the 3.5 millimeter replaced, I think both, or a complete cable replacement, which is probably what I'm going to go with because I have cables available for that. Now, just the other day when I was working on the stuff that got sent to me by Josh, I couldn't find my 3.5 millimeter jack, so I used a female instead of a male on that one, and then an adapter, and that works just fine. And then, like, right after I got done with that, I found my proper 3-pole 3.5 millimeter jacks. And then now I can't find them again to fix Moss's stuff so I can send it back to him. It's super annoying. And otherwise, I'd already be done with it, and, like, the box would be ready to go, but I still wouldn't have gone out to the shipping place because I'm lazy. And then one of the tape players just needed the connections on the inside cleaned up really good, and then it was spinning again after I put in the battery adapter. But the other tape player has a very, very bad short that was making the batteries get hot. Like I put the batteries in, and it was in there for a good 10 seconds, and the battery holder started getting a little warm. The battery holder itself was a little melty because of it, but it has held together enough to work after some really severe cleaning because there were batteries left in it. And yeah, they were new batteries and they weren't left in there very long, but because of the short, they heated up and they melted the plastic a little bit, and then the internals expanded, and then corrosion got everywhere. So quite a bit of time with some abrasive material and some isopropyl alcohol getting that working again. I need to make a new adapter for the battery pack since they are hard to get, and I do want the second one working, and that will take me some time to get that all dialed in. But I did find I don't know if you can see that on the camera for the people that are watching on YouTube. I did find my battery connectors. So, and I have a design now, a 3D design, that should work, hopefully, if it's not too big. So I can print it out, add these battery ends or connectors to it, and get the other one up and running once I fix that really bad short. I also need to get the package together and sent out to Moss, maybe with some extra headphones, but I definitely want to get the one set of headphones that he really likes working again, and then I also want to replace the ear cups on them because the ear cups on them suck. And they'll be much more comfortable when I'm done with them. I took some vacation days this last week in order to try and get some campaign stuff done for the school board. Don't know how it'll go, but I am giving it a try. I'm still working on getting the donations set up. We should have the bank account set up by Tuesday since Monday's a holiday, and the process has started. And once that's done, I'm going to set up the donation website, and then I have to fill out some paperwork saying that I'm not going to use the money in any other way than the way it's supposed to be used, and that if there's any left at the end, it gets donated to a 501c, which is cool. But yeah, the campaign so far is moving slower than most of us would like, but it's probably not that big a deal since most of our campaigning is going to go on in March and April, since the vote is in May. And the most important thing there is getting the name recognition. So
I'd vote for you, but I'd go to jail.
yeah. Also, because I was on vacation, I picked up a broken Dell XPS 13 9350 with the hopes of fixing a power issue and getting it running again. I was extremely disappointed, though, when I found out that it had already been opened up and that the SSD and the Wi-Fi card had already been removed. Also, testing with my multimeter proved that the issue was the processor that was causing the problem, as many of the capacitors around it were shorted. There isn't much you can do at that point with a bad processor on the Dell XPS 13s because everything is, soldered to the board and not really user fixable. I was debating with myself on buying a new motherboard for it, as it would still be very nice to have, and I absolutely love the screens on them. And it's one of the computers that has always been on my list of I want one. So I ended up ordering one. And so it's going to end up costing more than probably I could turn around and sell it for, maybe. But I'm going to enjoy putting it together, and I'm going to enjoy having a Dell XPS 13. Now, I know I've been talking about that PS3 that I needed to take apart and work on for a long time now, like months now. I did finally take it apart to see if I could troubleshoot the non-working disk drive. It was odd in that you can turn on the PlayStation by putting in a disc, but then the disc would not get pulled in. None of the mechanisms would turn on and pull it in. I took apart the drive and could not see that anything was broken, but verified that the pull-in motor was not being engaged. So I tested the motor. The first thing I thought was maybe the motor's bad. By hooking up a battery directly to it, I took an 18650 and ran some lead wires off of it, and verified that the wires on the board itself were good up to the motor, and then hooked up the battery to that and verified that motor does spin freely. This means that something is either wrong with the board, or I assume it could be something wrong with the power supply. Although I'm not seeing any other errors, it does turn on, it does hook up to a monitor, everything works except that disk drive. I could test further by taking apart the working PS3 that I have, but that seems like a lot of risk. Not that I won't end up doing it or finding another one to do it with, but right then wasn't the time to do it. Since I still have the board for that Blu-ray disc, I'm going to see if I can maybe find a mod for it, or a replacement for the whole drive. If I buy a drive that has a board on it already, even though I can't, because they're married to each other, I can swap components if I can find the one that's bad. And yeah, that's what I've been up to the last 2 weeks. Norbert?
Well, for the past couple of months, I haven't really distro hopped, as weird as that might sound, or strange. Rather, I've been in a limbo between 3 distros, Void, Arch, and Fedora. I even switched from Debian to Fedora on my laptop, at which point I had Fedora on my laptop and my tablet as well. And while I had bad first impressions of the DNF package manager over the course of these months, over the course of using it, I really grew to like it and appreciate how much functionality is packed into it, especially with the plugins you can install for it. I considered going all in on Fedora to replace Arch with it on my desktop as well, but I wanted to stick to some of the Arch ways of doing things, so I looked into how I could install Fedora with XFC while leaving out some of the packages that I wouldn't normally install. For example, the ones that are for automated and graphical package management. One way would have been to list the packages in the XFC desktop group and just manually install the ones that I wanted and leave out what I don't need. But a more elegant way turned out to be just installing the whole XFC group, but blacklisting some packages by adding a line that starts with exclude into /etc/dnf/dnf.conf. These mainly include package kit and DNF Dragora related packages. So now I'm in a limbo between only 2 distros, Void and Fedora. I look at it like when a car enthusiast has 2 cars, Void being the car that you would tinker with and you work on as a hobby, while Fedora being the one that you actually use to get around. These 3 distros I mentioned, including Arch, seem to be what fit my use case most and what I feel most home at. Even though that now I managed to leave Arch again, There was a time when I left it, but I came back to it again. Now I left it, and I think I won't need to go back to it anytime soon. But then it occurred to me, maybe there are just no distros left that I could try that could potentially be a better daily drivers for me than Fedora is right now, or even better than Arch. And maybe I'm just settled with these distros. If that's true, then I have an excuse to suppress any urges I may have to distro hop in the future if I start feeling like doing it again. But I wanted to be sure, and I kind of went overboard. There are a lot of online guides. There are a lot of online guides that help users in choosing distros by asking a number of questions. But the ones I looked at seem to give kind of questionable results, and even if they do, they're usually like the Arch and Void and Fedora that I already know and tried. So I decided to just make my own way of helping myself to find distros by selecting various criteria that are especially important to me. Things like how much the distro focuses on Wayland implementation and Pipeware implementation, and more importantly, compatibility with NVIDIA drivers and having the latest NVIDIA drivers, as well as a number of packages, as well as objective factors. For example, how many packages there are in the repositories. Shout out to Ripology.org for giving a good layout on that, and the freshness of the packages, and then some other criteria, for example, some subjective, and then some other subjective criteria, for example, how much do I like the package manager in the distro, what is its release model, since I prefer rolling or at least semi-rolling distros. Does the distro let me pick and choose packages to build the system myself? For example, like Fedora, Arch, and Debian do. And I really do enjoy building my system by picking packages. I scored the distros that I looked at based on these criteria, and the results confirmed what I thought. Fedora, Arch, and Void came in at first, second, and third places, all of them receiving scores of over 80%. With OpenSUSE Tumbleweed following not too far behind, at fourth place with around 80% of a score. This is pretty much in line with the list of distros that I came up with when we discussed the potential daily drivers in the inners a few shows ago. Interestingly, after these, there is a significant drop in scores, with Debian in fifth place only getting 60%, which is still a passing grade at my university at least. But But all of this just reinforced my suspicion that these four distros, Arch, Tumbleweed, Void, and Fedora, are the ones that I really should consider and focus on. And since I prefer Fedora over OpenSUSE, then that means I probably managed to find the distro that is best for everything, all of my use cases. Especially since I had some problems with Pipewire and Void, for example. Even before we wanted to record this episode, because I stopped using Debian on my laptop, I logged into Void and I suddenly wasn't able to get Audacity to record anything. But then I rebooted to Fedora and everything works. So it seems like Fedora is the way to go for me if I want to get things done, but I still keep Void around because I like some of their philosophy, as well as they do seem to focus on Wayland, which Fedora does as well. I may have a weird obsession with numbers and statistics, because whenever I have a question like this, I will just open a spreadsheet and start filling it out with stuff. But yeah, I went all in on Fedora, and at this point, I have Fedora on all of my three devices: my desktop, my tablet, and my laptop, which I don't think has happened since I had Arch briefly on all three, around 9 months ago.
You know what they say, 60% of all statistics are made up.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of bias in my statistics because I made up. There's a lot of bias in these statistics because I made up the rules for my convenience. So yeah, but I still do recognize the potential for Debian and Ubuntu for scientific use cases, because, for example, they still use Ubuntu for a lot of scientific research and stuff at my university. And for that purpose, these distros do have quite a lot of packages in their repos. And this is why I decided to not nuke my Debian partition, but just keep it around. So yeah, I'm still on XFC on my desktop, but I find that XFC is pretty much the same on every distro. So I wasn't really worried about it being. So I really wasn't worried about facing any issues that I didn't have with XFCE or other distros that may be present on Fedora, but there doesn't seem to be any. And XFCE just on Fedora works just as well with Pipewire as it works with GNOME. As opposed to on Void, where it seemed to had worked with, for example, GNOME, but not that well with XFCE. When XFCE, I had to relaunch it manually. Yeah, so I only managed to put Linux-related stuff in my wanderings this week, but that's pretty much it for me. So, Moss, what have you been up to?
Okay, thank you, Norbert. I spent the first week of this show preparing for episode 30 of Distro Helpers Digest, which was a lot of fun. Tony, Josh Hawk, Dale, and I participated. Dale and I broke new ground where we actually almost reviewed the same distro. And we also broke our record for episode length. Now I have to figure out what I'm reviewing for March. March. Full Circle Weekly News continues to be released weekly. I hope you're enjoying it. I cover everything I'm handed, or less, no ads and no hype. Episode 249 was just released today. I participated in Eurofilk, a singing and sharing Zoom meeting which happens every couple of weeks, but which I've only gotten into 4 or 5 times over the past year or so. We had singers from Portland, Oregon to Germany and Sweden. Had a blast, trotted out a new song. Afterwards, I rewrote a song which was unfinished and finished it. I bought a CD that was quite rare and offered to make a copy for my ex-wife, only to discover that I no longer have a machine with a CD drive. So I ordered an external CD-DVD drive. It should be here in the next couple of days.
It's always nice to have a CD drive. I have one. I maybe use it once a year, but I still like to have it around.
I got my Alvarez 6-string guitar out of the shop. They fixed it nicely, but I need to change the strings. Cost me a whopping $40. Woo. Too bad the guy is going out of business after 40 years of being in business. We got a rental car for while our Hyundai Accent hatchback is being repaired for having a dog run into us back in December. At first we got a Corolla, but for whatever reason we couldn't even get into it. We brought it back about an hour later and asked for a Chevy Spark. It has issues, but it's much more comfortable. They tell us the Hyundai should be ready to go on the 25th. I feel like I should go back to my substitute teaching job. The state is passing laws to let retired teachers come back to work and get paid in addition to their pensions, and are trying anything to just bring in anyone who can stand working with kids all day. Of course, they're also passing laws telling teachers what not to teach, and many good teachers are, quote, retiring, end quote, to avoid being charged with illegally conveying useful information to students. So, I'm not exactly wanting to rush back into that situation.
Yeah, that is a horrible situation. I mean, don't teach history. Make sure you sugarcoat it.
Right, white people never did anything wrong.
Nothing bad ever happened in history. That's the way you should say it.
We don't want to upset our students. We don't want to upset our students' parents for finding out that they're actually teaching real history.
Right.
Okay, Josh, it's your turn. I'll shut up now.
All right, Moss. Well, it's good to be back after having been gone for a while. As I alluded to in the intro there, I've been kind of in recovery mode for a while. I was sidelined a bit due to the fact that a family member contracted COVID, and within 2 days, all of us in the house had it. We were all fairly sick for a couple of weeks, but thankfully nobody had to go to the hospital, and we were all close to being fully recovered now. And there was a silver lining that I missed 6 days of work, and in that time, the issues I was having with my feet cleared up, so yay for that. Yeah, so while I was sick, my HTPC, which is just one of my old gaming rigs repurposed, decided it wasn't going to post any longer. It's quite old, being based on an AMD Phenom 2 955 Black Edition CPU, so I really couldn't fault it if it was ready to retire. There's a lot of hours on that machine. So initially I tried to give it a quick cleaning, but that didn't work. And the next day, I did a deeper clean and removed a stick of RAM, and that seemed to do the trick, as it booted up normally again. Just to verify that it was the RAM, I shut it down again and reinstalled the stick, and when I turned it back on, it booted normally, and it's been working fine ever since. So I don't know what the issue was, but I was happy to have it working again regardless. I do have a little bit of a sentimental spot for that particular one.
Probably just the RAM stick came unseated.
You know, I
It
thought
happens
that
over
too,
time.
Moss, but boy, I checked everything
Maybe-
and it was in there really tight.
It might have been gotten a bit tarnished over time, and then taking it out and putting it back in cleaned it up.
That could very well be.
But no, the AMD Phenom 2 was a great processor, and I think I used one for like a decade,
Yeah.
and then switched it out once. But I did have problems later on with it just plain overheating, and there was nothing I could do about it. I was on this show when I finally stopped using that and rebuilt my server. But yeah, I'd had that thing for forever.
Yeah, I was gonna say I had a Phenom 2 and an HP laptop, and man, oh man, that sucker the fan on that thing would run so loud you wouldn't be able to use it for something like this. It was fast. It had a high clock speed, but it ran hot.
Yeah, initially I had this in a case that only had an 80 millimeter intake fan, and it did run a little toasty. But when I did the rebuild on it to repurpose it, I got a new case, well, a used case on Craigslist, and when I called the guy, it actually turned out to be a former coworker of mine named Craig. So, little irony there. But yeah, it's running again, so hey. And in the event that it dies, I mean, I do have extra desktops, built and laying around, but yeah, good to have it going. And on a more Linux-related note, I have replaced my trusty Debian 11 install and have opted to live in the Manjaro world for a while, despite the fact that I said I wasn't going to blow away my Debian install again. It's not the first time that I've used it, but it is my first time using it as my primary OS. Although, disclaimer, I am using Mint right now. I'm using the KDE version, and just to make things even less comfortable, I'm using Vivaldi instead of Firefox for my browser.
Sacrilege.
I know. Well, only on Manjaro. On Mint, I'm still using Firefox. But I just wanted to, push my boundaries a little bit. And I figure if you're using KDE, why not use the KDE of browsers? So.
Well, then you should be using Falcon.
Right.
I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of options in KDE. There's a ton of options in Vivaldi, especially if you go for that full install where they have all their, email client. And I don't know. There's a ton of stuff in there. I'm still working my way through it. But
it's a fascinating browser. The guys over at Destination Linux a few months back had the head developer for Vivaldi on the show, and he was an interesting guy to hear from on that. And he actually even admitted that no, it's not. The little bits and pieces on top are not open source, but the code is viewable. They just not sure that as a small company going open source, but they are willing to consider it, which, in my mind, that's to hear somebody come out and say that on a podcast is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I caught that episode too, Bill, and I really enjoyed that. And I think he was a really earnest fellow, So,
they get good people on that show.
They really do. Yeah. So, while I can't do a full distro review here, I will say that so far I'm really enjoying myself. The normal Manjaro repos have almost everything I use on a daily basis. I've only had to install Spotify's standard notes and the Tutanota email client as Flatpaks. I haven't even touched the AUR. Plasma is a joy to use and is looking really sharp with the recently updated theme, the dark variant, of course, because I don't feel like burning my retinas. Vivaldi has been excellent as well, although Firefox does remain my favorite browser. So, while no OS can displace Mint as my chosen one, Manjaro does make for a very competent companion distro. So much so that I really don't want to call it a backup distro. It's more like a 1A and 1B designation. I'm just hoping that I can avoid the breakage that happened last time I had it installed. But they have added a new little app to the panel that's a news app. So when there's an update to your branch that you're running, they actually put it in there, and when you click on it, it takes you to their forum, to that thread, and it gives you a really nice breakdown, a poll that shows how many people have had, no problems or minimal problems, etc. And then a list of issues that you can further click on to see if there's any mitigations or workarounds, what have you. So I'm hoping with that and time shift, hopefully we'll be okay this time.
Yeah, I think Josh on Tech said it best. I think it was on an episode of Crowbar Kernel Panic. He was talking about Manjaro, and he said it's the Linux Mint of the Arch world. And I think that's probably the best way to describe that distribution, where they take something that's, it's good, but then they add the little bits and pieces to make it more palatable and great, I think.
I think you're right. Yeah, they do a lot of really nice value adds. And like Mint, they have that, GUI tool to work with the kernel and things like that just make it so easy. It's really nice.
Yeah.
So
For the AUR, I would say there are a couple of packages that are available as both package builds, but as well as binaries. For example, the Brave browser. So I think the packages that do have binaries, for example, Brave-bin instead of Brave, so you don't have to compile it, I think those might be safer to use. Because I had some packages that would fail to build from source, which is of course the majority of packages in the UR are building from source. I think I only had packages fail to build maybe once or twice. But for example, when I was using Arch or Manjaro Brave, since Brave is available as a binary package from the UR, I would just use it from there and not. I'm not even sure if Brave is available as a Flatpak yet.
I'm not sure. I didn't look at it, but I will say that I did have one issue, and that was that I initially installed Discord from their repository, and because Manjaro has that 2-week delay, there was an update to Discord, and then all of a sudden I couldn't use it because we all know how Discord is about needing to have the latest version. So I did have to uninstall it and reinstall it as a Flatpak. So I guess I have 4 now.
A few days ago, I wanted to run Discord. It said nope, you have to update it, but there was no update in the Fedora repos yet. So that was another instance when I just replaced it with a Flatpak and it worked. So yeah.
Right. I had to be off on Discord because of the update, and there was literally no way to install it on Arch, but the next day it showed up, and I'm good to go again. So
yeah, I keep encountering problems that are easily solved by just replacing the app with the Flatpak. And Flatpaks are more and more seamless to use, especially in Fedora. So I'm becoming more and more of a Flatpak advocate.
Righto.
Speaking of Arch and speaking of Moss, did I hear you commit yourself to an Arch?
No,
that's what I heard. That's what I okay.
It was a suggestion, not a commitment.
Yeah, but you went on the record with that suggestion. So I'll be looking forward to that.
Just because
Arch
I already have done a review on Arco, so I've already got one Arch in. I'm probably too soon to do another one anyhow. I just thought March. They don't have that in April,
And so you'll be doing an Arch. Okay.
Nope.
That's what I heard.
I haven't found anything yet, really. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing. I've had the usual wise ass suggest that I should do Void or Linux from scratch or whatever, but nah.
Watch out for them wise ones.
Yeah, well, audience, keep your ears open and find out what Moss ends up on. Distro Hopper's Digest.
I keep thinking about what I should recommend for Morse. Have you tried? Wait, which one was I going to suggest again? I forgot. Well, I will probably remember. So let's continue.
Tonight when you're in bed.
You're going to do Tails next?
If you really hate yourself, you should try to run Kali as a daily driver.
Someone suggested Genki too, but
All right, well, I think I'm going to wrap up my section here and pass it on over to Bill. So, Bill, what have you been up to?
Well, I apologize. I don't have a lot listed in the notes here, but I'll do the best I can. The last couple of weeks has been kind of crazy with getting the new podcast up and off the ground and running. I've had a lot of fun learning how to use Audacity to stitch together separate audio feeds, watching a lot of YouTube videos and tutorials on how to do all that, which, I mean, you could learn how to do everything from making a ham sandwich to removing a metastasized tumor from somebody's brain on YouTube.
With Audacity?
No, I wouldn't try that. But the only problem with things like that on YouTube is that the people that make the tutorials, they tend to speak in the language that these things are done in, and that's not always, for people that haven't learned the language yet, it's not always great. But I muscled through it, and I've gotten to the point now where I've learned how to take 3 separate feeds, which that's another thing, teaching these other 2 guys how to start Audacity on a 3, 2, 1, 0 like we do on this show, and then saying 0 and then explaining to them why we do that. It's, it ain't easy and it ain't hard. It just is. But it was a lot of fun.
What you're saying is that now that you've learned this, you can help out with the audio on mintCast.
As long as we can limit the number of people to 3.
It's not that much different. It's not that much different. Doing 3 is doing 5.
No, and what I was doing was I would line them all up. This is probably not the most efficient way, but it's how I kind of put it together. I'd line up all the feeds, and then I would mute them all except one. Well, the first one, and then the one that I was trying to line up, and then I would use the time shift to get it lined up, and then mute that, go to the next one, line that one up. That's probably the hard way, right? But that's how I was doing it.
No, that's the way.
Okay. The easy way is, the harder way is to learn how to read the wavelines. So you look at the tracks, and you can immediately spot where each person said 3210 or just 0.
Okay. Yeah,
it's like learning a new language. It's just speaking and reading wavelengths.
I was trying to do a thing where I was zooming in enough to where I could line up what looked like, the right wavelengths, and then playing it and then moving it from there. But I couldn't. It was irritating me how it would move away as I would zoom, and then I couldn't really work out how to just grab a hold of the ruler and slide it by hand. I never did figure that out. But anyway, I learned how to do that, and then I learned how to add the little bit of theme music to the beginning, a little bit at the end. My son, my oldest boy, he's got an electronic music project out there called Frost and Octane, and he provided the theme music for the project, and I was able to take those clips and add them to the beginning and end. And it's crude, it's rudimentary. Oh, another challenge we were having is that we had to, for technical reasons, we had to film the first episode right here in my basement. So that's 3 microphones on 3 separate machines, on 3 separate Audacity feeds, recording at the same time, and all the obvious challenges you're going to have with that, with the echoing and everything like that. But I think...
Well, that should make lining up the waveforms a whole lot easier.
Once I got that lined up, it took some of it out, but also another thing that was happening was I was insisting on using Jitsi because another goal for this show is to use as much open source software as possible to make the show happen, which sort of philosophically rules out Discord. We use Discord a lot, but I wanted to try from the get-go to use as much as I could, and I didn't like the way Jitsi, because Jitsi will do exactly as Discord does. You can stream all of the windows, and you can bring up, somebody can share like a window, just like we do on here, and stream that directly to YouTube. Well, I didn't like the way Jitsi was making our windows look, because they've got this zoom way of doing it where they like show the big picture of the person that's talking, and then everybody else is kind of siloed off as like a list of frames on the side. And that'd be fine if it worked great, but when you've got 3 microphones in the same room, it doesn't always accurately know which person is exactly talking at that moment. Sometimes you'll have somebody talking, and then the person that's zoomed in on is the person that's not talking. So what I did was I took the screen that Jitsi was feeding me, and I ran that through OBS and sent it to YouTube, and that process somewhere in there, I don't know if I didn't have something set up right or what, but it created an echo.
I had Dale in studio with me for one recording of Distro Hoppers, and we just put a splitter on the headphones and shared the mic, which meant that when Tony, we had one Audacity for the 2 of us, and then Tony's Audacity, and when he was producing it, he had to keep pushing Dale's audio up, but that was it.
Yeah, part of the reason I did it the way I did, because I wanted these guys to learn the workflow of, recording with Audacity, and then the whole thing with exporting the file to a FLAC on your machine and then uploading that to the Google Drive, just like we do on here. It's simple when you're used to messing around with computers, but the concept of a file system alone can be a little daunting for a lot of normal people. And you could take Dave and Steve and firmly apply them to the category of normal people. I got to tell you, though, I'm very impressed with their enthusiasm on this. Their willingness to learn and their excitement in it has really been it's really been inspiring, because for all 3 of us, this is the first time in our lives that we've ever been doing anything that is creating something. You know what I mean? I've never been a musician in my adult life, so I've never really added anything that wasn't already there to this world, and it's a kind of an existential experience for guys like us that have just been droning away working for so many years. So that's been all in all, I think it's been a positive process. We got the show, we live streamed, and it seemed like it went okay in spite of the little bit of a echoey deal. And then later on in the week, I got the audio only version out there, and it's available to download. And earlier today, I made 2 instructional videos. They're on the YouTube page for 3 Fat Truckers right now. One is how to install antenna pod on an Android phone. I use an application on Android called AirDroid Cast, and it's brilliant, except it only works on Windows, whatever. So I used that to cast my screen, my phone screen onto my Windows screen, and then I made a video on how to install antenna pod, and then search for 3 Fat Truckers and subscribe to it. And then my son came over later on, and we hooked his iPhone up. So we got an instructional video on how to install and search for podcasts on Android phones and iPhones. Because iPhones,
Bill?
as it turns out, come with a podcast player.
Bill, do you get the green flash on Jitsi?
No,
So
no,
it's just Discord that's
I
doing
don't get it on Jitsi. I don't get it on OBS when I'm just doing straight to OBS. It's only on Discord. I'm gonna get another webcam that's a little less. This is a 4K webcam. I wonder if maybe it's just a little too much. And I'll use it for other things, and then
Can you
I'll hook.
turn that down in the cam settings?
There's no usable cam settings on Discord that I can tell.
I do want to mention that I did discuss on the show a couple of different times about a little application called Screen Copy, SCRCPY, which works on Linux to cast your screen from your phone to your computer. And it works wirelessly now.
Screen copy. Well, I'm gonna have to check that out.
SCRCPY wireless.
Cool.
If you check the old show notes, I have links.
That must have been a while back.
No.
No?
No.
Well, then I have no excuses.
I agree.
I think he just mentioned it last episode again.
Yeah.
Will you stop?
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to take a second to just plug Bill's show, Three Fat Truckers. Man, I had a blast listening to that first episode. I know there was a couple little technical difficulties, but the content was fantastic. So for all the listeners out there, if you feel like giving a listen to Bill's show, I highly recommend it.
Josh, you should turn it into 4 truckers. Make them change all their...
yeah, we've discussed that. We're gonna have him on a time or two. I'm gonna bring
Get
people
Dale
on.
Miracle on.
And
there you go.
yeah, we'll get Dale on. Anybody that wants to come on, I don't see any technical reason why we can't. The show has a format, but keeping these guys on track. Well, have you ever taken a bunch of 7-year-olds to Chuck E. Cheese and then try to maintain control?
Yes.
It just, yeah, it's not going to happen.
Hey, Bill, that's a feature, not a flaw.
So, yeah, we've had a lot of fun doing that, and yeah, we're looking forward to having some folks on and trying to establish some sort of community around it, and people sending us stuff to talk about. We've got, between the three of us, it's well over, I think we worked it out to about 116 years of experience on the road, and we've seen a lot. So, and there's a lot to talk about out there. So yeah, anyway, that's about all I've got going on right now.
Okay. Well, then let's move on to the innards. And here in the Linux innards section, we're going to be talking about Raspberry Pi and other single board computer systems.
The Pi episode.
Yep. I've been wanting to do one for a while. Because
Me too.
I have a project that I found to be very interesting, even though I don't think it turned out to be very difficult. I kind of want to get into the nitty-gritty of it. This project is to use USB IP on the Pi, preferably the Pi Zero, so that I can use my headset with my computer while moving around the house without having to switch between multiple devices while podcasting. Not with like this podcast, but with the other podcasts that I'm on, where we don't do video. So my garage computer would be handling the connection to Mumble or Discord, and the Pi would be connected to a battery and my headset, allowing me to get things done while on some of my podcasts. There are other uses for it as well, such as using the Pi as a central hub so that you can use the same USB devices on multiple machines. Although this might require some extra scripting, but it prevents you from having to, disconnect it from the one machine, carry it over to the other machine, and set it up there. Now, the first thing that I did was set it up on my wired Pi 4 for testing. I first tried to do the setup in Manjaro, but I could not get it to work there at all. It would install, and then there would be some kind of dependency issue, and I couldn't track it all down. But since I had multi-boot set up, I was able to switch over to Raspberry OS, and the setup was pretty quick and easy, and I do have the link posted for where I got the information on the minimal setup that I used for testing. And on the server side, it was sudo apt install USB IP, and then I had to sudo mod probe USB IP host, and then to get it started, I had to do sudo USB IP D space tac capital D, and then I had to find the device, the USB device, and I think it was USB IP space list space tac L or tac capital L, and then pick the device that I wanted. In my case, it was 1tac 1.3, and so I did a USB IP bind dash B 1tac 1.3, and that's all on the server side. And the client side, I had to do the same install for USB IP, and then mod probe VHCI tac HCD, and then a couple of things that weren't listed on the site that I had to mod probe was USB IP core and USB IP host. And I guess that was a change with the newest version of USB IP that came out. And then I had to run a USB IP attach tac R, and then the IP address of the Pi, and then tac B, and then the device number again. Now, you can do that with multiple devices, and so anything you wanted to hook up, you just put that in for. And then, like I was saying, the Pi 4 was using a wired connection, and it worked perfectly when I had my Razer Nari Ultimate hooked up to it. I even used it on a couple of podcasts, even though it's like right here next to my computer, my garage computer. I just completely forgot that I had it set up, and it worked just fine. I also tested with a keyboard mouse combo to my garage computer, and that worked really well. I didn't notice any issues whatsoever. The next thing I needed to do was redo the setup on the Pi Zero. I ordered a USB hub hat for the Zero and found an STL on Thingiverse that would hold both, and I have it right here in my hand. I just wanted to show it on camera. I know that's not going to do a whole lot of good on the audio only, but it is still a really small device, and the hat just fits right on top of it, and the 3D print holds it all together, and it's still smaller than the normal Raspberry Pi. It's the width of the Zero, but about the height of the Pi 4. And I think it's great, and if I'm going to do any Zero projects in the future, I'm probably going to order more of these hats and do some more 3D printing of these cases, because I just think it looks good and it works really well. And it just comes with a little U-shaped connector to go from micro to micro, and so that way when the hat sits on the Zero, it just goes from one to the other and makes the 4 ports on the hub work. And I didn't have to do any special setup or anything. It was just plug and play. Now, while the hub was shipping, I did 3D print the case, and it does hold both. And I was able to use the Berry Boot image that was already on the micro SD card to completely redo the Raspberry OS image, so that I was starting completely clean. This time, on this setup on the Zero, I wanted to do the System D process so that I could run it headless with a battery for the power supply and not have to redo all the SSH into it and redo all the commands every time. I just wanted to be able to turn it on, hook it up, and have it run. So I used different set of instructions at this other website that I have listed in the show notes. And that gives the setup for the System D, and then you just have to change things with the proper IP address. Well, for the server side, you don't need the IP address. You just need the USB ID of the device that you're going to use, and you can have it hooked up into any of the ports, and it will automatically set it up with the proper location. And then setting up the System D daemon for it, and that worked out pretty well. There were some issues with that, and I'll get into it. And then same thing with the client side. You just needed to add the system file and the system D setup for it. And on that one, you have to include the IP address, which was fun because my IP address was changing because I was switching between different connection types trying to get things to work. And then you also have to change the ID of the device that you're connecting to, but it will automatically set the location using the commands that it has listed there. And it seems like it would be easily modifiable, and it is easily modifiable, so that you can just set it up for one of the ports and then hook whatever up to the port. The only problem is that if there's nothing hooked up to the port and you're set up that way, then System D will not work, and you'll have to manually start that once something is connected up to the port. Now, with some slight modification, yeah, I already mentioned that. I got it running easily enough again with the new setup, but the issue I ran up against is that the Wi-Fi on the Pi Zero was just not fast enough to get a good connection. I was getting really, really choppy audio coming out of it, and so for testing purposes, I hooked it up to an external Ethernet connection using one of the hubs that I have. And this worked, although it did not work as well as it did on the Pi 4. And I assume that's because it's all going through that one USB connection on the Pi, on the Pi Zero. And I have searched for my 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi adapters that I already own, but I can't seem to find them either. They're probably in the same place as my 3.5 millimeter jacks. So wasn't able to find that and test the 5 gigahertz range with the Pi Zero. But I did try a different 2.5 gigahertz external dongle with it has its own built-in antenna and everything, but that did not work as well as the built-in did, and the built-in was working pretty bad. Also, after having to restart both machines several times, I did need to set up some scripts in order to do the mod probing at startup, because instead of staying, each time I restarted, I had to redo the mod probe so that the system CTL stuff would work correctly. So this working wired but not wireless makes it a lot less useful to me, and the setup is a little bit more tedious because of the mod probes and the system CTL requirements. And if there's one issue along the way, then that system D function will just crash, and I'll have to manually restart it anyway. Thankfully, all these issues can be resolved over SSH, so it can be set up headless with minimal issues. I like that I got it to work, but for me, I'm going to have to call this a failure because it doesn't work well enough to actually use it for what I wanted to use it for. I could try to do this setup on my tablet, which would probably clear up a lot of the issues, but at that point, I may as well just run Mumble from there and forget about using my garage computer for it. Do you guys have any questions? Did I explain it pretty well? Okay.
Will this be on the test, sir?
Yes, you could definitely do it on a desktop.
No, I mean, I said, will this be on the test? But yeah.
Yes, it will. There will be a
Yeah.
test at the end of the show and a quiz. It won't be a full-on test. It'll be a quiz, and you'll need to know it all.
Is it multiple choice?
No, it's essay.
I'll take my preliminary F right now.
Okay.
I've been known
Yeah.
to BS my way through essays.
Essays are not my fun thing either, but...
Moss, tell us about your project.
Well, I currently have 2 Raspberry Pis, a 3B and a 4B with 4 gigs of RAM. Only the 4 is currently in use. I'm using it as a computer and TV server. I run Ubuntu Mate on it, which allows me to go to the web and authorize the use of various plugins and accounts. Mostly I use it to watch YouTube videos and news reports, run it as a Kodi server, and watch Plex on it. Oddly, I can't watch Prime Video or Peacock on it, although I can use the websites. I'm not paying much at all for TV streaming and still have a fully usable computer. So if I want to check my email, I can. Got a nice 32-inch screen across the room from me. It's almost big enough for me to read from my chair. I don't really understand why I can't use the website. Amazon Prime Video gives me error message that I don't have a particular library installed, and I go looking for it and I can't install that library on the Pi apparently. Joe, I think you told me something about that once.
I've struggled to get anything proprietary working on the Pi. It's supposed to work, but sometimes it just doesn't, and it's not real clear why.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like I say, I can go to their websites, I can go through my account, I can do everything but watch the videos on Amazon Prime and Peacock.
So you've got Plex running on the Pi 4.
I got Kodi and Plex.
So how are you doing that?
Well, actually, I'm running Plex through my web browser. I'm running Kodi through a Kodi program, but I'm running Plex through the web browser.
The web browser on the Pi?
Yes.
Okay.
Firefox.
And what distribution?
Ubuntu Mate. I think I'm at 21. No, I'm at 2004. I stuck with LTS on that. So when 2204 comes out, I'll upgrade to that. The big problem I'm having with thinking about upgrades is that the server that hosts my plugins seems to be down. And so I would have to find some way to install without affecting my home directory. And I'm not good at that yet. Anyhow, I keep wussing out on setting up the Pi 3B as a Pi hole. I know it isn't supposed to be hard, but sometimes I just need my handheld. And as Dale Miracle can confirm, even then I sometimes don't get it. So until I can get Bill or Leo or someone to help me, I'm probably not getting anywhere. Londoner has already sent me a 2-file installation guide that looks really simple, and I start freezing up in the middle of the first page, so I still haven't gotten anywhere.
What I want to do, Moss, is get a chance where we can get on Discord and go into the one of the video channels. That way I can bring up a page where I'm walking through you can watch what I'm typing in.
Right.
One step at a time and get that done. I was hoping to do that before this episode, but for one reason or another, it just didn't happen. But yeah, I mean, it's easy. The people that say it's easy are people that are used to the workflow, you know. And if you're not, it can be a little bit intimidating, a little bit daunting. Because, I mean, in order to get it to work, you gotta have a static IP, which the install script goes through all the steps of setting up everything from the static IP to changing the back end DNS service that you're going to use. It gives you the option of Quad 9 and Google DNS, and I think OpenDNS and Cloudflare. I always choose Cloudflare.
I'm sure I can do it. I just am also sure that my autism makes me really resistant to doing things that are more than 3 steps.
Yeah, it's definitely more than 3 steps. And then once that's all set up, of course, all the hardware that you want, you can either run your router to it, but I've learned I can't do that. I've got to just pick and choose what, you know, every device can be set up with its own DNS.
Right.
And that's how I end up doing it. Because if I run the router to it, then all the people in the house that are playing their silly little games online are no doubt going to run into a situation where they have to watch some silly little ad. Yeah, that's Pi 4. That's a nice
3B.
case too. Oh, that's a 3B? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's kind of cool. I don't remember who sent this one to me. I remember who sent me the 1, the 2, and the 4, but not the 3.
The 3 is perfect for Pi-hole because it's got a you can run Pi-hole on a Pi 0 and it works just fine. But the Pi 3's got an actual proper Ethernet port on it.
I could
So
go back through the old show notes because I definitely talked about these things when I got them.
Yeah.
Anyhow, what about you, Josh?
Well, unfortunately, I don't own a Raspberry Pi or any of the other similar SoCs that are out there. In the past, I did consider buying one to set up a Pi-hole, but ultimately I decided against it, and now there's really no Pis to be found. We're all out of Pi out there.
You say that, but I got
all
this
out of Pi. What am I without
PiShop.us.
you?
PiShop.us right here in the States. They've got Pi 400s, they got Pi 4s and 02Ws, all the ones that everybody keeps saying they can't get.
Oh, well, they were out where I looked, but yeah, maybe there are some out there online.
Yeah,
Next time I swing by Micro Center, I'll send you a message on Discord or something, and we can work out me shipping one to you.
I really don't know if I'd have a use for it, Joe, but you know.
If I get you
Pi-hole.
a Pi 0 W2 or whatever, it's not going to be all that expensive. It's probably going to cost more for me to ship it to you than it is actually going to cost for me to buy it.
We will hold you down and force you to use it, Josh.
I'm telling you, eat your pie. Have seconds.
The thing about the 0 though, unless you buy adapters and that, you've got to use wireless to use it as a Pi-hole.
Yeah, which is one of the reasons that I like the hub hat.
Right. And that was the reason I use my 3 as the Pi-hole. So I can just plug a Ethernet directly into it and not have to mess. Of course, the 3 has Wi-Fi too. But the 4, I think the 400 has the 5 gigahertz. You asked last week, Joe, if the Pi 02W had the 5 gigahertz, and I can confirm now that it does not.
Okay.
So it's still 2.4. So it's still, I mean, DNS does not need a heck of a lot of bandwidth and resource, but you're always going to be, your network and all your throughput is always going to be as fast as your weakest link in the chain. But again, I've only got a handful of devices out of the I think my router right now says I've got 27 devices connected to it.
Yeah.
And of those, maybe 5 of them are actually running through the Pi-hole right now. So yeah, this is a well-wired house right here.
Yeah,
Well,
and we were talking about cases, and I just wanted to show off my Pi 4 case real quick.
Oh, I love those.
Yeah, the ones that look like one of the original NESs. Yeah, I love this thing.
Yeah,
they make those for the they look like the Super Nintendos too. I was gonna get one of those.
Yeah, I went over to some of the sites to look for a Pi for sale, and they definitely are trying to gouge on these prices now.
The Pi 400, the whole kit is $100 on Pi Shop USA. But you get,
it was almost over there.
You get all of the wires, all of the plugs and wires, and you get their cheap little mouse. They got a mouse that looks like it was put together by.
Which Pi 4 is it?
The Pi 400.
Oh, okay, so it's Pi 400. That's not a bad price then.
Now, not when you get everything, including a little book that's got all kinds of projects you can do. I haven't looked through it real well yet because the only thing I wanted to use that for was desktop-y stuff, and that's mostly just to have content to talk about. But I can say now,
only $70 on that site.
What's that?
Main unit only for the Pi 400 is $70.
Yeah, so
which is weird because on eBay, Pi 3B is $65 plus shipping.
Oh, that's not a very good deal at all for a Pi 3.
No. There's a 52 with free shipping, but again, no case, just the board.
Yeah, and all that stuff kind of adds up. So I did have a friend bring one over once, so I have seen one running, and he had the small screen on it and everything, and it was pretty impressive for such a small device. But again, I just personally don't have any use for it, so just not something I've been interested in. But I am happy that people have found so many ways to implement them and that the project has seen such widespread success. I just don't foresee myself being in the market for one anytime soon. But I may not have a choice.
Well,
With
there's always a choice. You could just say, no, Joe, I'm not getting one.
well, Joe, I never say never, but you know, well,
They're a
I
lot
guess
of fun.
yeah, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it
I've
goes.
loved all of mine, and I've used. Well, I still have some zeros that I don't think I've put into circulation yet. So maybe I'll just send you one of those.
All right.
And those zeros are the bottom line worst experience. And even those are better than what I remember the PCs that were shipping with Windows XP back
Yeah.
in 2002, where
Probably
it was
faster.
point, click, and wait,
Right.
So
i400, go ahead. I'm sorry.
it's still impressive that they've turned, because these things are basically the size of a stick of DDR4 RAM for a laptop. It's about the size of these doggone things, and that's a complete computer right there, including wireless. So it's still impressive to me that they can make something like that and charge $10-15 for it, 15 for the 02W. And that my first computer back in 02 when I went back to school was 512 gigabytes of RDRAM. Ain't none of y'all old enough to remember that. Well, anyway, and it had that Pentium 4 single core 32-bit processor. That thing costed me $3,000 altogether with it and all the peripherals. And this thing is $15, and it is comparable, if not more performant than that was. So it's fascinating. It's fascinating to me how far we've come on that stuff.
Yeah,
Well, the
sir.
Pi 400 looks really, really cool, and I'd love to have one. I really don't have a use for it.
And therein lies the problem.
The Pi 4 I'm using. The Pi 4 is great. I can stick that under my TV and it hides, but having a whole keyboard on a machine means I pretty much have to use it as a desktop, and I don't need another desktop.
And you're not going to it's not going to be real good for content creation and doing a heck of a lot of things at one time. But I'll get into here in a minute, since they came out with this 64-bit version of Raspberry Pi OS, some of the benchmarks are pretty impressive.
I was going to say, Bill, that's pretty much all I have on it. So if you want to take the reins, it's your turn.
So, yeah, I've got several Pis. I've got one of about everything that's come out since the Pi 3, because they came out with the Pi 3 and then the 4, and then I think the 0 came after the 4 did, if I remember right. I could be wrong. And then the Pi 400 sometime around the same time that the compute module came out. And I've got all of these, and they've done several different things. The Pi 3 is running a DNS sinkhole, which is called Pi-hole. And what that is, for anybody that's not familiar, is a network level ad blocking service, but it's a lot more than that. Pi-hole can basically block any domain that is added to its block list, and out of the box, there's a copious number of domains on that list. It's an effective ad blocking thing right out of the box, and all you really do is point your DNS to it. And honestly, I didn't even know what DNS was until I decided to play around with this thing and install Pi-hole on it. And but more than that, you can also block DNS queries that companies might use to track your usage and the places you go online. It's if you ever installed one and then watched the number of queries that come across your network for all your devices, it's actually staggering, the amount of stuff that's being collected based on your internet activity. And yeah, once you get the package installed, you can access the admin interface by just simply typing the IP address /admin in your browser, and then you've got a username and password involved in all that, and then you've actually got full control over the system from right there in the web interface. You can whitelist and blacklist, or allow list and block list any domains that you want. So Pi-hole will run good on just about anything, including the Pi Zero, because DNS is really, from a hardware standpoint, it's not using a heck of a lot of resources to manage it. It's actually surprising how little you need to run something that has such a huge impact, but it really does. It can really speed up your perceived internet experience, because it's blocking things on a web page or things that are going on in the background. So it'll seem as though your websites are loading much faster, because there's a lot less to load, and there's a lot less things getting in the way. I run it on my Pi 3, like I said before, because I can plug a Ethernet cable directly into that. Now, the Pi 3, the thing about the Pi 3 is that the Ethernet, from a hardware standpoint, the Ethernet traffic, meaning the data coming from the Ethernet, is sent through the USB bus. So you have slightly less speed as a result of that. But like I said before, DNS is not a hugely taxing process in terms of data transfer, so it's not that big of a deal. They resolved that problem with the Pi 4, where the Pi 4 has proper gigabit Ethernet.
Well, it has a proper gigabit Ethernet port, but it's still only, I think, maxing out at like 300 Mbps instead of, a full gig.
I think it's far more than anybody's ever going to use Pi to use. I don't know. Let's see. So the Pi. Okay, so my favorite one is this Pi 400, the one I like to talk about the most. I got this hooked up to this monitor. I had grand ambitions for this thing, which none of them really kind of turned out, or none of them really kind of shaked out. So at this point, it's just me playing with new software and then new releases of Raspberry Pi OS. And recently, they've taken their 64-bit version out of beta. I say that because you've been able to get a 64-bit version of Raspberry Pi OS for some time. It was a bit of trickery to get to it. You had to go directly to the download mirrors and download it from there. It's been available. It's not been completely optimized until now. And I linked here in the show notes to the Phoronix page where Michael Larraball over there did some, as usual, he did some pretty exhaustive benchmarking where he compared the 64-bit version to the 32-bit versions, and the results were, for the stuff where 32-bit was still just a little bit more optimized, the difference was negligible in my opinion. But for everything else, the 64-bit was a dramatic increase in performance. In some cases, up over 40%.
Hey, Bill,
Yeah,
have you tried the beta of 2204 from Ubuntu Unity?
I have not yet.
Rudra just came out with that last week or so.
Is that 64-bit?
64-bit.
Okay, that'll be my next thing to
Ubuntu
try.
Unity Respin 2204 beta.
Unity relies heavily on GPU acceleration, so I'll be interested to see how that works. I always liked Unity. Unity had Unity is kind of like a cab over truck in my line of work. Nobody wanted it when it was out, and now that nobody's got them, everybody wants one. That kind of thing. It gets all kinds of love out there in the universe now, but mostly
it was a lot better after a year or two than it was when it came out, and most people judged it on the initial offering, myself included.
I'd like to say that I'm in a cab over, and if anybody wants it, they can have it. You go bouncing through some alleys and that thing, and yeah.
I just remember driving in the early 90s when those things were more ubiquitous out there, and it was just not a very positive experience. Now you see them guys drive in, they got them things with the stretched out frame and the cables all hidden, and everybody's like, oh man, I want one of them. Yeah. 20 years ago, we couldn't have paid you enough.
What did they call it called again?
Okay, so you got two types of trucks. It was you had a conventional, which had the big hood out in front, like you would expect to see in an American truck, and then the cab over was like a flat front face, which actually is probably still more common in European countries, just because of how much less space you've got to get around.
Oh, so basically the ones that have a flat front.
Yeah, the cab over had the flat front.
Yeah, the difference is where they put the motor.
Yeah. With the conventional, we can get up out of our seat, walk right back into our bunk like it's a RV or something.
Oh, so it's called because the cab is over the motor.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, the cab over. You got the big dog house, and you had to crawl over that. I don't think I could do that.
Those are basically all the trucks are almost like that here.
Yeah, I do remember that from being in Germany.
They tend to turn better, but they also tend to ride a whole lot worse than a conventional.
Yeah, because you're directly above the steer axle, which is the worst riding axle on the truck.
But you can see like directly down the front to know how close you are to something.
Feel like you're gonna go face first into the pavement.
Yeah.
Whenever you hit the brakes, it's Anyway, back on topic. Like I said, many of the benchmarks that Michael Larabal did showed a dramatic increase in performance, and I can tell you firsthand that this version, I don't know if I'm going to keep it because it's still LXDE, and they've done some things to modify it, but there's some things that irritate me. I haven't been able to work out how to make custom keyboard shortcuts. I've been looking at instructions online, and it's always changing an XML file while I try to do that, and it doesn't seem to take the change. It's still like I want to map the thing with LXDE. You don't have a launcher, and what I like to do is hit the super button and then start typing my command. And with LXDE, you hit the super button, it brings down the menu, but then you still have to click on something on there to get it to work. There's no automatic like you'd have with GNOME and whatever. And that kind of irritates me. And another thing to keep in mind, it's based on Debian. It basically is Debian, so you're not going to have an up-to-date version of Firefox. Some software is going to be way outdated. It does have the version 91.6.0 ESR of Firefox, but you do have the ability to install snaps. I haven't done that on this install yet, but I did it on a previous install, and the performance was kind of hit and miss. It was interesting. The install I had of Ubuntu proper for the Pi did not have snaps enabled by default. It was installed but not enabled for some reason by default.
That is strange.
Yeah. But once I enabled it, I had access to the up-to-date Firefox Snap, but at times it would crash on me shortly after starting. So this has not crashed a single time. This is the ESR version, which is still the ESR for 91.6.0 is still. It was released in February of this year and will be its end of life in September, so it's still got plenty of life in it. In terms of security patches and bug fixes. And anybody that's used to dealing with Debian is used to dealing with that. And for most things, you do have access to Flatpak. However, as of right now, there is no ARM64 Flatpak. I actually even checked that out right before we went on stream here to make sure that was still the case, because it seems like that would be something that they would work on relatively soon. But like I said, there's no stopping you from enabling Snapd and installing snaps if that's your forte. You just go to the Snapcraft website that has the instructions. I linked to that in the notes too. This is the first time I can honestly say that it's been an all-around positive desktop experience for the things that do work. I mean, it's a bare bones experience in terms of desktop, but I feel like much of that was done to keep it in a condition where you have an expectation of everything working, rather than loading it up with a lot of features that might work or might not. It's LXDE with a little bit of customization on top of that. If anybody's ever ran LXDE on a desktop, it's about as bare bones as it gets, and while still providing you a usable desktop paradigm that you're used to seeing. So I think if all you want to do is do some light browsing and check some email and maybe watch some YouTube videos, stream just fine, 1080p. The audio and video sync is great. It works just fine. And for a computer for $100, I think you can't really go wrong. All you need is a monitor.
Not a hot gaming machine.
No. So if you're a gamer,
But you can install Steam Link on it. And if you have a gaming machine, then you can just stream everything from that gaming machine to the Pi in another room.
That would be interesting to try. I haven't tried something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, as far as the monitor, what's the output that it has built into it?
Okay, so the Pi 400, like the Pi, has 2 HDMI ports. So you can...
It's supposed to be able to do 4K. I've never actually seen it do 4K because I don't have any 4K monitors, but my understanding is it's supposed to be able to.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. And if you're running one screen, if you got one connection to the HDMI port, it's supposed to do 60 frames a second. And if you're running two, if you got both of them hooked up, you get 30 frames a second divided by 2 monitors. So that's still, for what the Pi can do, I think that's still pretty impressive.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, it's one thing I wanted to try was to see if I could make a podcast with one. That'd be really impressive. Get all the way to the end. Oh, by the way, I just made this entire episode on a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, I have noticed running Ubuntu Mate, I can plug an external hard drive into it, which I have music stored on and can play that music. But the hard drive sucks some energy, and so if I'm going to go watch TV, I have to unplug the hard drive.
Powered external hubs.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
need powered external hub. It's true.
Yeah, I've got a couple.
Right now, I'm
well,
running everything unpowered, and it works well. But
That's another
I
thing.
can't run everything all at once unpowered.
These things come the traditional way of booting a Pi, no matter what version it is. Well, past the 3, has been a micro SD card. But with shortly after the Pi came out, they updated the firmware, and this one's running on a really fast Samsung USB thumb drive.
Yeah,
Which,
I actually think they didn't come out with the official firmware update until like the 3 came out, because for a long
Yeah.
time there you were having to run some interesting things to make it boot from a external, or you had to manually reconfigure the kernel to make it look first, or not the kernel but the
you could
firmware
put
to
the
make it. Yeah,
boot partition on the SD card, and then the system partition could be
yeah.
on the USB card.
But
or
then with the
standard
3B,
drive.
they released a firmware update that would allow you to just straight up boot from an external, and that is
changes
awesome.
everything.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I've done the firmware update, but I have not been able to get it to work.
yeah.
I
Because
think I have to go in and edit some files before I can get it to actually boot.
it's much better to do it from an external drive than it is from the micro SD card. Because even your best quality micro SD cards have a shorter shelf life than an SSD.
They were just never meant to do something like that. I mean, that's a crazy thing to ask an SD card to do.
Yeah, and your SSDs or your thumbsticks, a lot of your thumbsticks are usually faster than a micro SD card.
Yeah, I've got some Samsung thumb drives that are faster than some SSDs out there. But I've also got a Pi 4. I've used that for it's sitting over on the table doing bugger all right now, but I've used it for a number of things, and mostly consumption-based devices. At one time, I had my Pi 4 under the living room TV with a USB hub attached to it. The hub had 2 3 terabyte and 1 terabyte drives plugged into it, and it was running a purpose-built ARM distribution called LibreElect. Or I say ARM distribution. It was a Pi distribution called LibreElect. As the website describes, LibreElect is just enough Linux for Kodi, and you could be forgiven for thinking that there was nothing on it but Kodi, the way LibreElect would run. But there was a little bit more added to it. It had a Samba server running and a couple of other things, SSH server running, which was there was not a lot you could.
You could drop down to the command line and manually install more things, or manually force an update of all the things that were happening in the background. That happened a lot with Libre.
I'll say that I didn't write it here in the notes, but when I first got the Pi 3, that's what it was doing at first. That was actually a better experience for LibreElect than the 4 was. The 4 came out, and it was a bit of an abrupt change in the way things were done. It was a complete change in the SoC, and the community had to hurry up and catch up software-wise with it. So things were kind of hit and miss in the beginning.
Yeah, when the 4 came out, I mean, basically it was a new instruction set and none of your old stuff would work. And that was one of the big things about the Pi in the past. Whenever they came out with a new version, you could just move your micro SD card from one to another and have it work.
Which you can do. Now, that's another thing I forgot to bring up. If you install like 32-bit Raspbian on a micro SD, you can take that micro SD out of the Pi 0 and you can stick it in your Pi 3 and it'll boot up and work, within the restraints of a 32-bit operating system, of course. And you can pull that out and put it in the Pi 4 and that'll work. That is an interesting thing. Now, I mean, that all bets are off when you start talking about 64-bit. Obviously, you're not going to take the 64-bit card out of the 4 and stick it in the 0 and expect it to work. But that was one claim to fame that Pi's always had. That as far as like this Pi hole goes, I could take the SD card out of that and put it into one of my zeros over there and just boot it up and have my Pi back up and running, no problem. Or my Pi hole, that is. So yeah, the Pi 4, it was running LibreElec, and it had the 3 hard drives hooked to it, and that was how I was streaming all of my locally stored media, which was a considerable amount of media, to the device, because it would stream to Kodi, obviously, on that device, on that TV, but it was also running a Samba server, so I could sideload Kodi on other devices in the house, and then play videos and music and whatever from that Samba server that was running on that Pi 4 downstairs. And, that was interesting in and of itself. Eventually, I've moved on to Jellyfin, but that was before Jellyfin kind of came along, and before it got pretty good, that was an excellent way to handle all your local media files and some streaming too. Although that's Kodi and streaming has always been kind of hit and miss. I've never tried running Plex though on a Pi. I have to admit, I've often wished that there was a better way of doing that. Okay, so I also had a couple of Pi Zeros. The only thing I've ever really used them for is to run Pi-hole. The thing about a Pi Zero, it works okay for a purpose-built device. I wouldn't want to force it to do a lot of multitasking just because of the RAM limitations involved. But as far as that goes, it's a perfectly good device for running a Pi hole or security cameras. It works just fine for that. The Pi Zero 2W actually has a similar SoC to the Pi 3 in terms of the CPU capability, but yet it still has the 512 meg of RAM. So it's still just a appliance-based device. Real quick, I want to mention that this is not a Pi, but it's along the same lines. I've got one of these Rock Pro 64s. That's a device made by a company called Pine 64, and they make some single board devices as well. The difference is mostly in the software with these devices. I've got one that I've got in a NAS case that's running here next to me right now, and it's nice because these devices have a PCIe slot built right into the card, which makes them good for hooking up like a SATA card to. And then I've got 2 3 terabyte Iron Wolf drives in a NAS, and this is my Nextcloud server. And I enjoy running this because it's been part of my journey disconnecting from the Google thing, because it's got all of our phones in the house connected to it. We back up all of our photos and documents and videos and everything we take. It uploads to this every night. It's running Debian proper. It's some of the positive things are that it's got the capability of running. It's got the capability of running a PCIe card, which kind of breaks the paradigm of single board. It's not really a single board computer at that point, but still, the problem though is with the software, because Pine 64, unlike the Raspberry Pi Foundation, does not actually make the operating system for these devices. It's sort of made, chucked over the wall, and then the community, who is, to be fair, have been, enthusiastically providing operating systems for this thing, but it's never, up until recently, it's not been stellar in terms of its experience. It's been kind of like, okay, let's get this thing running. Okay, so now we're having this problem. Let's fix that, and then But now we've got Debian proper for it, which gives us access to the snaps.
Yeah, and I do want to mention here, this seems like a good point for it. I was going to mention it at the end, but I'm going to bring it in now. There are a lot of companies that are making similar SoCs to the Pi, even much more powerful SoCs, or single board computers as well, SPCs. But BeagleBoard, Panda Board, Orange Pi, Banana Pi. There's a lot of them, and the problem is that they have their own instruction sets, and it can make it keeping up with the updating on them difficult, and eventually people move away from it, so you don't get updates anymore. Not like with the Pi, which just seems to never stop getting updates. Also, with the PCIe, if you look on YouTube, there are some really, really cool builds that people have done with, I don't know if the Rock Pro 64 specifically, but like with the Panda board, where people have hooked up graphics cards to that 4X slot and done actual gaming on them, which is insanely cool.
Yeah, I haven't tried anything like that. That would be interesting. Power-wise, I don't know that it's dramatically more powerful. I mean, it's got 6 cores, which is odd, but it does. It's got 6 cores. Still got 4 gigs of RAM. But another limitation also is that it does not have Wi-Fi built into the card. They're really kind of meant to be plugged in to Ethernet and used right there in place. You can get a dongle. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. But they don't have the Wi-Fi built in. But the biggest limitation for these things is always going to be the software. With these more fringe SoCs, or well, not the SoC, but the companies that are making these boxes, they really count on the process of making the hardware and then counting on community to provide the operating system for it. And it was quite some time before Debian came out with a proper version, which that's another thing. The Debian, for most of the time when you install an operating system on a Pi, you're struck with how much different it is process-wise from installing an operating system on a PC. With a PC, you have this concept of booting into an ISO and then going through an installation process. With a Pi, it's always been a process of flashing an already made image onto the boot media, and it just, for some people, it's always felt like you're just booting somebody else's hard drive, because
But you could just install something from Live ISO, right?
Yeah, well, so you would have to go through the process. If you wanted to make serious changes, you would have to change the username, make sure you knew exactly all the names of the groups that username was associated to, create a new username, join all those groups. The Debian proper version that I put on this Rock Pro is the first time where I've actually booted from an SD card. And that's another thing with these things. It'll boot from either an SD card or it's got an eMMC slot on the board that you can connect an eMMC. And you get slightly better performance out of that. A little more comparable to a spinning Rust, I suppose. And then there's a third option that involves an SPI a bit of SPI storage that's built into the board itself, but you're really only supposed to flash the boot partition to that and then have the rest of the system on another bit of storage. But and I couldn't tell you if it'll boot from USB yet, because I've only just used it for server purposes, so it doesn't really matter. But it runs Debian. This like I was getting ready to say, the install. This is the first time where I booted from an SD card, and it actually took me through a process of asking questions like a regular installer would, like a Ubuntu server installer would. All sort of ncurses based on the terminal, but it was still an installer. And then you end up with a completely personalized installation of that operating system. Most of the time, you're booted directly into a desktop or into a server environment. Anyway, yeah, and it runs ZFS really well, and it's been for about a year now. It's been handling my Nextcloud server fairly flawlessly. Not a whole lot interesting going on with it. But that's about all I've got for right now. I'm still this is the thing with these Pis is never ending. There's always something new to play with. There's a lot of projects out there that somebody, if they had the time, they could play around with.
Yeah. There's actually some really cool pre-made kits that I've always found interesting, but haven't wanted to invest the money into when it comes to like building your own handheld emulation station using the Pi 4 modules.
Yeah.
And they just snap into place, and then you put the casing around it, you put the screen in. I'd love to do something like that. I just can't justify the cost.
Yeah, there's some cool sister boards out there that you can get, plug those, and then you have all kinds of potential for PCIe and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, it's inhibitively expensive right now.
Norbert?
But that's all I got.
Well, like Josh, I never had or used a Raspberry Pi. I never really even thought about getting one until recently, when my arsenal of computers grew from 2 to 3, when I acquired my tablet, which I do use for media consumption quite a bit, but sometimes downloading stuff over Wi-Fi is just not the same as a wired connection. So I ended up in a situation where I have an external SSD, where I put an M.2 SSD in an external casing that I like using to transfer files because it's so fast between my computers. But it's only 480 gigabytes. So often I would end up with files on my hard drives that are connected to my computer. I have two terabyte external hard drives, and I would want to transfer files to my tablet, for example. And oftentimes I would just sit down to my computer and transfer from the external hard drives to my external SSD, and then to my tablet or my laptop. So I thought maybe I should just consider setting up something, maybe a Raspberry Pi, as a home file server that I could just mount on via the network on all my devices. So I could just reach my files from that I could maybe connect one of the or even both of these 2 terabyte hard drives to the Raspberry Pi itself, and maybe I could just use it to store all my files. Maybe if I use the Raspberry Pi to download when I want to download something today, so I would be able to download directly to the file server, and I wouldn't even really have to just copy files to my other devices. Maybe I could just stream it from the Pi itself. I haven't really did any commitment towards this, but it's just an idea I had.
I think
Other than that, I don't really have other plans for that might involve Pis.
just a regular. There's an official Ubuntu server image out there, and then maybe just doing something with that, with either some Samba or an rsync server to upload every time the device is connected to the same network or something like that.
I'm not sure if Samba would be a good
Nah,
choice
maybe not
because
Samba.
I would only I would only want to share stuff mounted on Linux devices.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't suggest Samba for that. But if you have a Pi set up, I've talked about it in the past. You can set up using what is it? Is up and is down.
Sync thing.
No, you
Sync
can.
thing's another.
I was going to say you could script out SSHFS connections.
Yeah.
I had someone recommend you something else other than SSHFS. I don't remember. I could quickly look it up, but yeah, that's also an option.
Yeah, it's network up and network down.
Yeah, I would imagine it would work stellar for something like that.
If I do a quick search here on my messages, then I was recommended SFTP.
SFTP.
SFTP. Yeah, I have a friend who uses Linux, and I described what I would want to do to him, and he recommended SFTP. I don't even know what SFTP is.
It's
It's
SSA. It's just FTP
Oh.
through SSH.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Maybe would that be faster or less resource heavy than SSHFS?
It'd be about the same.
Yeah.
Okay. I will look into this. But yeah, other than that, that's all I can bring to the table to this topic.
Okay. Well, that's it for our innards today. Let's move on to vibrations from the ether. And sadly today we have no emails. Please
Email us, folks.
mintcast@mintcast.org. Show ideas, questions, anything you got. We'll take it. We'll put it on here and we'll try to answer it. Probably horribly.
In fact, it'd be fun to do an entire episode of
Feedback.
Topics,
Feedback
yeah.
episode. We haven't had one of those in a long time. I'd love to do another feedback episode. All right, let's move on to check this out. And here in check this out, first up, Norbert. What do you got for us, Norbert?
I was browsing Reddit and someone posted the project called Nala, which is described as a prettier terminal frontend for apt for Debian-based systems. I took a look at it, and it's nice and colorful. It kind of reminds me of the output that the NF on Fedora and Zipper on OpenSUSE have, but it also has some nice info displayed. So and a nicer progress bar with more details. It just all around looks nice. I haven't tried it, but I would assume it works on all Debian-based systems. Maybe I will try it, since I still have my Debian partition. So if it's something that interests you, give it a look.
And Moss, you had one?
Yeah, I've got an uglier terminal. Let's see if I can get my screen up here. Doesn't want to do it. There we go. Can you see that? Anyone that is watching the show?
Hold on, let me switch over to it. We can see your screen, but you're sharing us.
Now?
That's what I'm seeing.
Oh, shucks. Well, I didn't get it shared right. Let's change windows. Doesn't let me change windows here.
Maybe you have to click stop streaming first and then start the other one.
Well, the problem is that I have to start it from the window I've got Discord in, and then I have it in a different workspace.
Oh,
And,
I think if you just what if you tried moving it to this workspace?
Yeah, it'll
Or you
have to
could,
be on the
or you
same
could,
workspace.
or you could try if you share the entire screen, then if you switch to workspace, it will switch to that workspace.
There you go.
Well, I had it there for a second.
Yeah,
Okay,
go live with
there
that.
we go. This is called
We can't see
Cool
it.
Retro
We
Term.
can't see it
Can't see it. Why not?
because you didn't click go live.
Ah,
Can you?
Go
Yeah,
live.
okay.
There you go. And there, now we can see it.
this is called Cool Retro Term.
That
And
looks
it's
cool.
in the Ubuntu repositories. It has several. You can change settings on the fly. You right click, go to settings, and there's monochrome green.
I love that.
There's green scan lines.
Yeah, look at that.
There's default pixelated.
Hmm. Oh, that
And when you
looks cool.
type, yeah,
All the crap we used to hate back in the day. Now it's
Oh yeah, here's
Now
your
it's
Apple
retro.
II.
start
is your-
typing. That also looks cool.
yeah.
Here is the so-called vintage.
Starting to want to bring out a dot matrix printer right now.
Start typing in a terminal. I think it
IBM
also has a nice
DOS.
effect.
And you can set the scan lines. You can set how fast the scan is, or how dark the scan is, or how opaque the terminal is. It's really cool. It is just beyond cool. And this is cool-retro-term. And you can find it in the Ubuntu repositories and who knows where else. Here's another one, the IBM 3278. A little sharper graphics on that one. And the last one they have is called Futuristic, but you can design your own.
That is crazy nerdy.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Love it.
So, let me stop sharing my screen so I can go back to reading what I have to read. And yeah, it's I found it in Bodhi. Someone recommended it on the Bodhi. But it's an uglier terminal, but wow, it's cool. Customizable on the run. You just do right click and settings. I have a link in the show notes to a YouTube video showing how. So that's it for me. How about you, Norbert?
I recently started listening. Well, I listened to only one episode yet. I found a podcast called Open Source Voices, which is trying to focus on the individual open source developers and their life stories and their projects, rather than focusing on a specific project at a time. And the first episode, in the first episode, the guest was the Fedora project lead developer, and I found it really entertaining and inspiring. The guests would tell about how they got involved with either Linux or open source or both, because if you get involved with one of them, you eventually get involved with the other, and it's just a nice and fresh format. It's different from the other tech-related podcasts that I've been listening to, so I can recommend it to people. If they will link in the show notes. Then.
Cool. Another new podcast.
Yeah, I checked that out yesterday when you mentioned that. I added that. I'm going to listen to some of that this week.
Okay. That's it for Check This Out. Let's move on to announcements. Our next episode is at 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on March 6th, and we have a link in the show notes to get that converted to your time zone. And our next live stream will be at 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on February 26th, next Saturday. And we also have a link for that to get it converted to your time zone. Okay, and that's it for our announcements. Let's move on to the wrap-up. I'm Joe. If you like the sounds of my voice, you can catch me on a couple other podcasts. I'm on the Linux Link Tech Show, which you can find at tllts.org. I'm on the Linux Lugcast, which is at linuxlugcast.com. You can find me on MeWe. You can send me an email directly, jb@mintcast.org, or you can buy me a coffee using the link in the show notes. Norbert?
You can send me an email at norbert@mintcast.org.
Moss?
Moss?
You can catch me every week on Full Circle Weekly News and about once a month on Distro Hopper's Digest. You can email me at bardmoss@pm.me. My other contact information can be found at itsmoss.com. Josh?
Yeah, you can find me at jt@mintcast.org if you want to send me an email. I'm Josh Thacker on Discord and at metal_foss on Twitter.
And then Josh H. couldn't be with us today. You can find him at joshontech@mintcast.org, at joshontech on Twitter, and most other social sites. He's also on Crowbar Kernel Panic. And Nishant also wasn't able to make the show today. You can catch him at nishant@mintcast.org, Recon Ghost on Instagram, Recon Ghost at GitHub, Ghost.recon on Discord, and Maverick00783 on Steam. And Bill, how about you?
Well, you can email me at bill@mintcast.org. I'm Bill_H on Discord. I'm at WCHauser3 on Twitter and WCHauser3 on Facebook. Also, check out my new podcast. It's 3ftpodcast.org, and there's all kinds of instructions on there on how to consume all my content.
Okay, before we leave, we want to make sure to acknowledge some of the people who make mintCast possible. Josh Lowe for all his work on the website, Hobstar for our logo, NetRD for the animated Discord logo, and Londoner for our time sync, and Norbert for our audio. Bytemark Hosting for hosting mintcast.org, and our Mumble server, archive.org for hosting our audio files. The Linux Mint development team for the fine distro we love to talk about. Thanks, Clem.
Thanks, Clem.
Thanks, Clem.
Thanks, Clem.
And that's a wrap.
Yay. Yay, team.
All right.
Kill the Audacity.
Killing the
almost-
Audacity. Export. Export
Gosh.
audio.
I'll be right back.
381. Tech. Joe. Oof. So how did all the listeners like the show? And I know Aris and Mark, you both left some comments in regards to the pie. I'm sorry we didn't get to them. It ended up being busy.
Yeah, and you were worrying that whether the stuff about the pie can fill the innards. I think that was a very lengthy innards.
That's it.
Oh my.
It's our normal time. The
Was
show
it?
wasn't 3 hours. Well, it's 2 hours and 50 minutes.
Yeah, it was a full one, but I think it stayed within the pocket.
Not the pocket my butt's sitting in. About 20 to 30 minutes too long for that.
Yeah, I hear you, Moss. I'm experiencing
I
a
have a
little
spine
numbness.
condition that doesn't show very well, but boy does it hurt. Being vertical is what hurts. This is why I sleep in a recliner. Being
Yep.
horizontal hurts in other ways, but somewhere in 45 degrees is good. Anyhow, let's see. I seem to have my audio saved. Let me go find Google Drive. Shared with me. Got mintCast. Audio. Where's audio?
I don't
Show
think we
audio.
have.
We need a new
381
folder.
I do not know if I can create a folder. I don't think so.
New folder.
381, right?
381 audio. Okay,
Yes, sir.
I just created it.
Yes, you did.
And there we go. Ah, thank you, Tony.
And there I go.
All right.
Oops.
We're going to end the
It looks
stream
like it's
now.
doing slow here.
Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Yes, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.